Okay, good afternoon. My name is Frank Cadigan. I'm the Assistant United States Trustee for Region 16 in the Santa Ana Division, and this is the time and the place for the 341a Meeting of Creditors of Point Center Financial Incorporated. Chapter 11 debtor. The case number is 8:13-11495-TA. Today is May 2nd, 2013, and the time is 1:12 p.m. in the afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get on the record introductions of people sitting at the table, starting with myself. Again, Frank Cadigan, Assistant United States Trustee.
Christine Thagard, Marshak Hayes for the Creditors Committee.
Rob Golden Forsyth for the debtor.
Okay.
I'm Dan Hergy, President of Point Center Financial.
Okay, Mr. Hargey, could you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, again, state your name for the record.
My full name is Danny, D-A-N-N-Y, Joe, J-O-E, Harkey.
Okay. And describe your relationship to the debtor, Pacific Point Center Financial.
I'm the president and 100% owner.
And you own all the shares?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Harkey, did you review the bankruptcy schedules, the petition, the statement of financial affairs of Point Center Financial, Inc. before you signed them?
Yes.
Are you familiar with everything in those schedules?
Yes.
Do the bankruptcy schedules list all of the debtor's assets?
Yes.
Do the bankruptcy schedules list all of the debtor's liabilities?
Yes.
Do the bankruptcy schedules list all of the debtor's creditors?
Yes.
Is there anything that you need to correct or add to the schedules or need to bring to my attention of any problems in the schedules? And if you do, could you please state at this time?
None.
Mr. Harkey, could you please describe the debtor's business?
Point Center is in the business of making real estate secured loans and taking trust deeds on those loans. On the opposite side of the business, Point Center solicits investors to invest in fractional interest of those loans. And we have various investment instruments, including fractional tenant and common investors, primarily accredited investors that are worth more than $1 million. And then we have two mortgage pools. One is called National Financial Lending, that was a registered offering and permitted offering by the California Corporate Commissioner under 25113 of the Corporate Commissioner's rules. Then we have Point Center Mortgage Fund 1, which was an SEC registered pool, which also operates on a SEC registered, it did at the time, registered approval, and also a 25113 permitted offering from the California Corporate Commissioner. And then in addition to that, we have a program called the Mortgage Note Program, which was an obligation of Point Center Financial to pay investors who invested in that program. The original program assets were secured by deeds of trust on the real property, and investors invested in those programs. And at back in the so-called good days, Point Center had an obligation to pay those investors regardless of the disposition of the assets. And I guess the other component is the ongoing servicing of the portfolio assets. So I've been in business for 40 years. Actually started in the real estate business in 1973 at the same time I was a high school teacher, and I actually started in the private money loan business in 1977, and continuously since 1977 to current and ongoing, I have been in the same business and will continue being in the same business.
Okay. I may come back to national finance lending in a few minutes here. Are you aware whether any of the note holders or investors are secured by Point Center financial assets?
Which program? I mean, there are some that are, and some that aren't.
Okay, let's start with the program where some of the note holders and investors are secured by Point Center financial assets. Let's start there.
Yes.
Okay, what program are we talking about?
The mortgage note program.
The mortgage note program. Does that involve national finance lending, or is that something different?
No.
What is the mortgage note program? What is it?
It again was a permitted offering approved by the Department of Corporation under 25113 to allow investors to invest into this program, and they would receive an interest, and Point Center would then invest those dollars into respective trust deeds secured by real estate. And so the investors were secured by the real estate trust deeds, but also secured by the obligation of Point Center to pay in the event that the trustees went bad.
Can I just, I'm not going to testify for it, but just to kind of clarify, I think that when he uses the term secured, he doesn't mean in the sense of a security interest. It's my understanding, he can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the mortgage note program, people made in essence an unsecured loan to Point Center Financial, and then Point Center Financial used those funds to make loans to other parties where deeds of trust were obtained. So the mortgage claims, mortgage note program claims are just unsecured claims to Point Center.
Well, let's make it even. Let's
Yeah.
suppose I invested $1 million with you, with your company, me,
Yes,
Frank
right,
Cadigan,
right.
in the mortgage note program. Take me through where my $1 million would go. I write you a check, and I want to be part of the mortgage note program. Explain to me what
You would
happens.
sign an offering circular and a subscription agreement, and I believe an investor questionnaire sufficient to prove that you had the capacity to take the relative risk. And the offering circular is a disclosure document that provides for what the program is and delineates all the risks sufficient that you'd have to understand, including that you may not get paid on time, and including the fact that Point Center may or may not be able to fulfill its obligation. So it's very clear that the risks are delineated.
And does my money, who do I make my check to?
The money, I think Point Center trust account.
To a Point Center, so I'd
Right,
write
and
it,
then-
pay to the order of
Right.
Point Center.
Trust
what?
account.
Trust account.
And then the money then is invested by Point Center into a trust deed, a trust deed, and that's delineated in the offering circular that you would sign. And that the documents say that, you are part of the program, and that Point Center has to take a piece of that trust deed and match it to that program. So let's say that your $1 million may go then into 4 or 5 different loans, which is designated to be matched with that one program.
And my money would be used to do what? Purchase?
Purchase trust deeds.
To,
And Point Center couldn't take that money that you invested and go on a vacation, or could not. Everything is delineated to go into that program and to buy particular assets, trust deeds, to match to the program.
and it would be secured by real estate.
The trust deed would be secured by the real estate, not the program assets are unsecured.
And what are program assets?
The relative trust deeds to match the program.
Right. And as an investor, I would know what my trust deed secured. I would
You
have
get
addresses.
You would
and-
get statements showing what the secured pool of assets are.
Okay, would they be first trust deeds or second trust deeds, or what would they be?
First and seconds.
And I would know that in advance.
Well, you would know it while you're in the program.
Well, okay.
You wouldn't necessarily know it. If you invested, you wouldn't get a 5-year linear.
Okay, so if I invested $1 million and I wanted to be in a first trustee position, would my money be in a first trustee position, or would that be part of the gamble that I would just have to?
No, if you wanted to be in a first trustee position, you would not go in that program.
Okay, what program would I go into?
You would go into what's called a fractional note program. Okay?
And that's, you were describing two things, a mortgage note program, and this is part two of this?
No, it's not part, it's a totally
It's a
different
sub.
program.
It's a-
The predominant business model, stemming back to, let's say, 1977, if somebody wanted to borrow a second trust deed on their house, 5, 10, 25,000, you would underwrite that file, and then you would match a trust deed investor who would decide to invest that 25,000. Back then, it was characteristics of seconds on homes. That was the nature of that business. Okay, as you roll forward, the private money lending business, like me, basically moved more into other things like commercial, industrial, and development, and vertical construction, and infrastructure financing, almost like a mini Weyerhaeuser company or Lehman Brothers, where we basically packaged and syndicated investors to go into trust deeds. So if you said, I want to buy an interest in a first trust deed, and the first trust deed is $1 million, and you then said, well, I'll buy 10% of that trust deed, you would get a tenant in common interest in that trust deed, and your name would be recorded as a beneficiary to that trust deed. So that's a different program.
Okay, so we have the mortgage note program, the fractionalized interest program.
Yeah,
Fractional note program.
I'm sorry.
No, not fractional note program, fractional tenant in common trust deed program.
So it's called fractionalized,
Fractional tenant in common.
okay, fractional
Tenant in common trust deed program.
fractional tenant in common trustee program.
Yes.
And
That's
then-
basically the oldest part and pretty much the foundation of our industry.
And that was first trustees that these investors would get.
Well,
If I wanted one, I would go
you
into that
see,
program.
well, it's a risk reward specific. For example, if you said I want a low risk 5, 6, 7% trust deed, I only want this kind of property, and I only want single
It
family.
would most likely be a first trustee.
Yeah, you could make that decision, nobody else. And if a trust deed comes available, you're the one that could make the decision. You would get what's called a material disclosure package delineating a loan summary, an appraisal, borrower's financials, borrower's credit report, pictures of property, loan documents that the borrower signed, and a preliminary title report showing what is recorded on the property and what will be recorded at the closing.
Okay.
Then from there, you would take that's fractional tenant in common, you would take that and you would then say, yes, I like this, I'd like to invest my 100, and then you would get an offering circular, a subscription agreement, a investor questionnaire.
Yeah, but the important thing, would it be a first trustee, if that's what I wanted?
If that's what you wanted, because you're the one who makes the decision.
Okay, so it would be.
Yeah.
Any possibility that it might not be a first trustee?
Well, you're the one that makes that decision.
Okay.
You could call up Point Center and say, I want a 12% yield, and the only investments available are seconds,
Got it.
because a first trustee, so
Okay,
at any given time, I might have 3 or 4 or 5 transactions for you to look at, and you might go through the 5 and you say, I need a high yield and I'm willing to take the additional risk,
okay,
or I'll take the lower yield because I don't want the risk.
okay. Let me back, and then you get a fee for that? Point Center Financial gets a fee for doing that transaction?
We get an origination fee paid by the borrower who makes the loan.
Okay, not by the investor? Not by me?
Not by you.
Okay.
However, at the point of the closing where you switch the security interest for the money, you understand that? Okay, you have a closing.
Right.
It's like
I get my money back?
No, you compare it to a car.
Okay.
If you borrow money at the bank.
Well, we're talking about the borrower now.
Yeah, the borrower at the bank. Borrower at the bank says, I've got a car. Bank, here, you get my pink slip.
Right.
You give me the money. At that closing, the bank holds the security interest, the pink slip, and the borrower has the money. Right?
Right.
It's exactly like that in the trustee business. At the point when a borrower borrows the money, closes the transaction, there's that delineated point of closing.
Mm-hmm.
The borrower gets the money into his account and switches a security interest back to the lender.
Right.
Okay? And you as a trustee investor get a security interest, the borrower gets the money.
Right. Got it.
Okay? And your expectation, given all the relative documentation that you are disclosed, decide whether or not that's an effective investment for you, whether or not you want to take the
Okay,
relative
but
risk.
if I decide it is and you close,
I beg
I
your
get,
pardon?
if I decide that it is a good investment and we end up closing, I
Yes.
get a trustee.
You get a tenant in common group
Got it.
of people, 10 people on the trustee.
Okay, now, does your company get a fee at closing for that?
We get a fee paid by, I'll call the origination fee that the borrower agrees to pay us.
Okay.
Can be anywhere from 3 to 6, 7%
Okay.
generally.
Got it.
And so at the closing, by law, we can't take advance fees from borrowers,
Okay,
right?
All right.
So we go out and solicit, we process that loan, we underwrite that loan, we get it prepared for closing, and then we go out and solicit
okay,
interested investors. And at the point of closing, the borrower pays an origination fee.
understood.
Then,
I understand that. I'm not going to learn this business in an hour and a half, but I
Well, I understand.
but I am trying to get the big picture. So if I have a tendency to cut you off, it's just
well, that's
because.
okay, but then the other part that you need to understand is that, yes, the borrower then pays that origination fee that goes into Point Center's general account and pays the bills,
Got it.
right?
Okay.
Then at that point, then those beneficiaries, those investors agree to pay us a monthly ongoing servicing fee, which provides cash flow to pay the
Okay,
bills.
so I would pay a servicing fee.
Yeah, you would pay
In
a
addition.
servicing fee monthly.
Okay.
And so ongoing. So the combination of those is how we make a living.
Actually, once the loan is made, the servicing fee, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, would come out of the note payments that the borrower makes.
Is that true?
Well, it comes out of multiple sources.
Well, it would still impact me though, because instead of getting, say, $500 a month, I get $500 less a servicing fee.
That's correct.
Got it.
That's correct.
All right, you said something else, and now I know that there's a mortgage note program, there's the fractional tenant in common trustee program.
Right.
Before I get to any other programs, you said something that I want to go back to. You said, and before Mr. Go kind of said something, you said, and Point Center would guarantee.
I didn't say guarantee.
What did you say?
Has an obligation.
What is it? Why don't you
Based on, okay, when you're talking about mortgage note only.
mortgage note program?
Only.
Only.
Okay, that's the only program. The offering circular says that Point Center is obligated, conditioned upon its ability to pay. It's not a guarantee. And the offering circular delineates all the risk associated with a good faith position of our obligation to pay, but it also very much spells out the risk. If the economy changes, if our cash flow goes down, like in 2007 in June, it was like a major freight train going over a large
No,
valley.
I understand all that.
Yeah.
Okay, what I'm trying to get in my head is, you mentioned that if I was to invest, let's go back to me again, I'm going to invest $1 million in the mortgage note program.
Yes.
What do I get for that, and what kind of obligation do you give me for that investment?
Point Center's obligation to pay you, and in the program is a trustee that matches to that program.
Okay, so in the event my investment went south, and you had the wherewithal to honor that obligation, you'd pay me back for my losses?
Yes.
Has that ever happened before to any of your clients in the 30 or 40 years
Oh,
you've been
yes.
doing this?
Sure, before the 2007 meltdown.
And where do you get the money to do that?
Well, you have, remember, this is a permitted offering. This is approved by the Department of
I
Corporations.
understand, but where do you get the money to do that? To
Well, you
honor
have-
those
you have
gifts,
three-
those
we
obligations?
had a line of credit, large line of credit, secured line of credit. That's the same one that you know, Pat Merck. You're familiar with that line of credit?
No, I'm not.
Pacific Mercantile Schedule.
Oh, that, Pacific
Okay,
Mercantile Bank,
That was
yeah.
line of credit used for that. We had investors coming and going, and we had loans paying off, and we had loans paying off all the time.
Well, why would you offer that kind of perk to the mortgage note program to
Because their
investors?
yield was lesser than a trust deed, and Point Center operated on the spread between what we paid them. There's about 1,700 different companies in the United States that have a program very similar to that.
Okay. All right, so we've talked about the mortgage note program, the fractional tenants in common trustee program. What other program? we got?
Okay. Let's start with National Financial.
Well, how many of these programs do we have?
4.
Okay, let's go to number 3.
Okay. The idea of creating a pool.
Pool.
Okay. You go to a securities lawyer and you come up with it. You could almost compare it to like a mutual fund, where rather than investing in an individual fractional trust deed, you can invest in a pool. The obvious reason is that you don't have to make individual decisions. You don't have to look at loan packages. You don't have to worry about paying off. You have less management. You are basically relying on, in this case, Point Center Financial, which is the managing member of the limited liability company. So what you do is you start out, you form a limited liability company called National Financial Lending, LLC. You then approach a securities lawyer, and you go to the Department of Real Estate, Department of Corporation, excuse me, right? Okay. And you get a permit to offer, a 25113 permit. It allows you to function, and then you start taking investors who purchase shares in that operating company. They don't get a trust deed, they buy a share. Just like you would get a share if you bought Google or Yahoo or somebody, you get a share. So they purchase share interest in this limited liability company, and then more people purchase, then you take that money and the pool becomes the lender. The limited liability company is the lender and becomes the beneficiary on the loan. You understand that?
Yep.
Okay, so that program has operated since 2002, and of course up until the mid part of 2007, very successfully, and still is an ongoing operation, still managing, still has cash flow,
Okay.
and still solving problems relative to the borrowers defaulting. And I need to make a comment here. The borrowers defaulted on these loans,
Okay.
right?
Well, you tell me.
Well, the borrowers defaulted.
Okay. All right, now let's
So
go to
now-
program number 4.
Yeah, program number 4. Mortgage Fund 1.
What's that all about?
It's just like NFL. It's just like NFL.
Before we go, we
but-
just had this gentleman came up next to you. Make your appearance on the record, sir.
Yeah, bear with me, my voice is a little worse. Dale Martin, I'm in-house counsel. for
Dale
Point Center.
Martin, in-house counsel for Point Center. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Hart.
There was a time in 2005 where we decided to take the pool model, like NFL, and to turn that into a SEC publicly registered offering. And so I approached a securities lawyer and started drafting that, all the documents, and we were successful in getting an SEC registered offering to raise money, and the purpose is that you could raise money in various states as opposed to the other program, which is California residents only. So we quit raising money at the beginning of 2006 in NFL, and we replaced the raising of money into the pool by raising money in Point Center Mortgage Fund 1. So it's very much like a limited liability company. Point Center is the managing member. It then becomes a lender on various trust deeds. And Point Center is the servicer.
Out of all of these four programs, your clients, were they attracted to one more than the other three, or was it evenly divided?
Well, I think there are people who like to be hands-on, who like to look at the real estate, who like to look at the underwriting package or the material disclosure package.
And what percentage in terms of volume? Give me a...
Probably 2/3 were fractional. More involved trust deed investors, and 1/3 were pool investors.
So most of the people wanted to make their own decisions on what their investment went to.
Yes, and almost all of them, well, not almost, at least 80%, would invest in the pool, but also invest in fractionals.
Okay.
So if they had like an IRA, or they had their so-called their more conservative set of money, they would have invested that, let's say, in the Mortgage Fund 1 or NFL. But for their own money, they might be hands-on, and so they might have 2 or 3 different programs. For example, I have money in NFL, in my pool, in my IRA.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Yeah. Did you say Mortgage Fund 1 was an LLC? Did I hear you say that?
Yes.
Okay, I thought I did. Okay, great. Anything else?
No.
Okay.
This is really a wrong question right here.
Okay. My next question has to do with Schedule F and the characterization of over $40 million of Schedule F unsecured debt being listed as contingent. And maybe your attorney could answer this, Mr. Harkey, but I'll pose the question to you, and if Mr. Goh needs to respond, please do. What is the contingency on all of this debt on Schedule F?
I think the thought was because when we were preparing this, we didn't know exactly which ones were backed by deeds of trust still, because these are the ones where there's I don't want to use the term a guarantee, I don't think it's the right term. I think that Point Center has a direct obligation to pay back these amounts regardless of whether or not the security that is also provided for it. So that's what the issue, I think, was there could be additional security that could cover the debt, and it wasn't clear whether or not the amounts that would what amount would actually be owing by the debtor. Is that a fair statement? Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. On, I don't know, maybe the schedules, Mr. Go has the schedules there, he may have to show you this. I'd like you to look at Schedule B on item 14.
So for the creditors, we're going to help you out here. The page numbers at the top, so there's an attachment to B14, so it starts at page 16. So if you want to follow along, so at the top it says page 16 of 176, and it's the interest in the partnerships or the joint ventures. So this is Point Center Financial's interest in partnerships or joint ventures. So there's going to be a series of questions there in case you want to follow along. So you have to flip it.
Yeah, I have that, yeah. I'm going to go by this.
So this is really corresponding to this.
All right, Mr. Harkey, do you have the schedules in front of you, sir?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to go to,
I think you want to look at the attachment there. The attachment.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because right now, we're
How about
just,
question
there you
14?
go.
14? Okay.
Yeah.
okay, so I'm going to
There you
start
go.
with,
This one here?
Yes.
Okay.
question 14 says, interest in partnerships or joint ventures itemized, and you have C attached, so let's look at the attachment. Schedule B attachment. We start with Georgetown Commercial Center LLC. The debtor shows an interest of 22.758%, profit sharing. My question to you are, what are the entity's assets and liabilities? Georgetown Commercial Center.
You know, what's liabilities?
No, I don't know. Yeah, I know which page
Yeah,
that is.
tell me this.
It's a piece of land in Texas.
I heard you say you didn't know, though. I sort of picked that up. You said,
Well-
I don't know.
Well, when you say what are the assets and liabilities?
Yeah, that was my question.
I don't know. I mean,
You don't know.
Gwen helped me with this.
Okay, who would know?
Gwen Lanson.
Where is Gwen?
She's here.
Gwen, why don't you come up here?
She's,
Gwen, who are you?
I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Point Center Financial.
All right, just sit down. If we have any questions, we'll ask.
Can you speak louder, please?
I will try.
Thank you.
He doesn't have the built-in.
Okay. Now, Mr. Harkey, do you know what the assets and liabilities are or not?
no. I rely on my chief financial officer who put these figures together.
All right. Mr. Harkey, on the interest in partnerships or joint ventures that you see here, which are, I guess, the 11?
I think it's 12 because
Is
the
it
last
12?
one's
Oh, 12? Okay.
a dangler.
Do you know what the assets and liabilities are of any of these entities listed in Attachment B? And if you do, just let's start with an entity and let's talk about it.
I have relied on Gwen to do that.
So the answer is you don't know.
And Gwen has been with me for 20
I understand, but the answer is you don't know or you can't provide the information.
Well, I need to rely on her.
Okay, fine.
Why not property
Well,
is?
you do know, why don't you?
I know what the property is on all these. When you're talking about, I mean, I can describe every one of these properties, if that's what you're asking.
Well, you know what the asset is, but do you know what the liability is?
Well, Point Center has a corresponding amount of a trust deed, and...
All right, well, let's do this so that we're not here all afternoon. Let's start with Georgetown Commercial Center LLC. What's the asset?
It's a piece of land in Texas.
A piece of land in Texas. What kind of land is it?
Commercially zoned land in a pretty much a growth area.
Is it raw land?
Yes,
Undeveloped?
undeveloped.
Okay, what are the liabilities against the property? Do you know?
No.
Okay.
Could you clarify what you mean by liability?
I mean, what do you, like, do you, a liability is something you owe against the property. Like, for example, like, well, just a second, ma'am, just a second. It's simply, just so that we understand, if this is a piece of property in Texas, if it was owned free and clear by the debtor, and they didn't, then they wouldn't owe any money, there'd be no liability against it, other than maybe taxes or something like that.
There's another way to look at it, Mr. Harkey, it might be more helpful. If you looked at a balance sheet for Georgetown Commercial Center LLC today, what would be on the asset side of the balance sheet and what would be on the liability side? Does that help?
Well,
She's not sworn in yet. If you don't know, then we'll go
it's
from
my
here.
understanding, we basically foreclose on all these properties, and Point Center has a piece of each one of them. To the extent that we owe anything, the only thing that would be outstanding on them is property taxes, perhaps some.
Okay, so you foreclosed on this
Yeah,
property
all
in
these
Texas.
properties are foreclosed.
And I say you, Point Center Financial
Point Center
foreclosed.
Well, let me make it clear. Fractional interest holders foreclosed.
Okay.
And Point Center has that respective ownership interest in the new LLC that now owns the
Okay,
property.
let me ask you this. Would there be, Mr. Harkey, just so I can conceptualize it, we have undeveloped real property in Texas in the name of Georgetown Commercial Center LLC.
Which is an LLC created for the purpose of holding that
Okay.
after the foreclosure.
Are any of the fractionalized interest holders, would there be any other, I mean, there wouldn't be strange, wild holders of deeds of trust out there involved in this property that wouldn't have some connection to Point Center Financial, would there?
No, this was created
Got
as a
it.
holding entity.
Understood.
Pardon? For the purpose of that one asset
I
until
understand.
disposition.
Okay,
And it,
so it's foreclosed. Okay.
But-
Go ahead, Ms. Sorensen, if you have to ask a question, go ahead and ask.
So there, Mr. Harkey, there's a book value listed here, December 31st, 2012 book value, $3,320,750. Is that the value of the land in Texas?
we won't know that until we sell it. We think that's the value.
Okay, so what does that mean to you, the 1231?
I need to help him here because
Okay.
I was involved with Ms. Millance and I don't want to testify. This is what the debtor's interest is.
Right,
We try to put the debtor's interest, the debtor owns, it was originally a loan made by a bunch of fractional interest holders, of which Point Center owns 22.75%. The property was then foreclosed on, and now Point Center has its 22.75%, and its book value of its interest
it's 3.2.
Yes.
Right. So if you wanted to figure out the full value of the property, you'd have to add another 78% to it. No?
Book value, I guess.
Yeah.
Who owns the other 78%, Mr. Harkey?
Fractional note holders and NFL. And, and NFL.
Generating any income property?
No.
Let's go to Jack Rabbit Trail Investors LLC. What is the asset?
It's a piece of land in Beaumont.
Piece of land in Beaumont,
The developable,
but it's undeveloped right now?
undeveloped,
And it's Beaumont, California?
right?
Generating any income?
No.
And it was foreclosed, right?
Yes, and a dedicated limited liability company created for the purpose of holding the asset.
Which is called?
Jack
Got it.
Trails.
I just wanted, yeah. Let's go to the next one. Sixth and UPass Investments LLC.
It's a piece of property in Arizona, in Chandler. Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, San Diego. This is,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So we're talking about 6 and you passed investments. Where's the property located? In San Diego?
Yes, in San Diego.
Is it undeveloped?
No, it's a 14-story condominium that was under construction.
Is that the property that's in receivership now with Mr. Kipperman?
We were foreclosed out of that property. We got a cram down in a bankruptcy court, and we were foreclosed.
So that is the property that Mr. Kipperman
Yeah,
is
that's the
involved
property,
in?
right.
Okay.
I don't,
No, I don't
that's
think
the
so.
property that was foreclosed on,
Yeah.
that resulted in the Brewer judgments. That property's gone. The only claims the LLC has are the litigation claims against First American Title Company.
Okay. So
That one's gone.
this property is gone.
Yes.
Let's go to Mission Ridge Ladera Ranch. What is that property?
It's a single-family residential home in Mission Viejo, fairly luxury neighborhood.
And is it foreclosed on?
It's foreclosed on, and there's a dedicated limited liability company created for the purpose of holding that asset.
Which is Mission Ridge Ladera Ranch?
Yes.
And no income producing? Is it rent leased?
Yes, it has income.
Income, how much?
The income is credited to the investors in this. I think it's like $7,000 a month.
Okay, and it's leased.
It's leased.
Okay, and then Washington Avenue Murrieta LLC?
That's a piece of, an assemblage of land in Murrieta in a commercially zoned area. The original owners were going to put together a shopping center and office, and we foreclosed on it, and then we created a limited liability holding company by the name of Washington Avenue LLC to hold the asset,
It's undeveloped?
undeveloped, commercially zoned land.
It's not making any money? Is it no income?
Well, it has minimal income. There's a cell tower on it.
Oh, okay.
For the creditors in the audience, Washington Avenue Murrieta LLC and Los Banos Land Investments LLC, the next two, they're both in their own Chapter 11 proceedings, which is written someplace else in the filings, but you might want to just make a note of that.
On Los Banos Land Investment LLC, what is the nature of the property?
That was a fairly large development in Los Banos. The nature of the loan was we made a construction loan for a 404-unit subdivision. So our loan put the streets, curbs, and gutters and utilities in. And then there's a attached 36-hole golf course, and so our loan was used to grade and put in all the substructure for a golf course. And of course, in mid-07, they collapsed, and we, through their bankruptcy, we ended up foreclosing on the property, and then we placed it into a dedicated limited liability company. We have managed it ever since, and the 5-year property tax accrued, and we did not get enough of the investors who would participate in cash calls. We think it's a viable piece of real estate, and we've had interest in it, so we're in the process of marketing it at this point.
But you still owe the taxes.
Yeah, the taxes, if you look at Western Mutual and Los Banos, the two issues that come up is the investors who invested in the trust deeds are not willing to bring forth cash. So we don't own the minimal amount that Point Center owns is very minor. So it's owned by a bunch of fractional tenants and programs, and they refuse to bring cash forward to handle the ongoing expenses, primarily the property taxes, and therefore we end up having to file.
And what's the reason for that? If you know.
The reason, well, when we're the servicer,
I mean, why would somebody not want to protect their investment if you know the answer? Just,
well,
It's up to each individual.
yeah, it's,
you're testifying.
well, I mean, I have 40 years of business. I
Okay, well,
have a pretty
what-
good answer.
So?
Either they don't have the money,
Okay,
or they elect not to for various reasons, or they don't do it because they're hostile toward Point Center Financial and are making an effort to destroy Point Center Financial, and they're trying to get other people, like, for example, in Murrieta, Mr. Lloyd Charton owns 500,000 of that and openly tries to get other people not to send in cash call money.
okay.
So, I mean, in other words, we're a servicer.
I just wanted to just get an idea of why, if you said it was promising and you
They
had
have
hope.
potential, they're both
Oh, I
wonderful
was
pieces of
just
real
wondering if
estate.
I was an investor and it had potential, I probably want to, see it survive, but I was just, that's me. Income producing, I take it's not, right? Los Banos?
Western Mutual has minimal money
I'm
coming in.
talking about Los Banos.
Oh, no.
No, okay, thank you, sir. Let's go to Estancia Escudero Investment LLC. What is the asset?
That's a group of single-family residential blue top lots.
What is a blue top lot?
They're graded and they're ready to build on.
Okay. Okay.
And Estancia Atascadero LLC was created for the purpose of holding those.
Sorry, what? Oh, right. Where are they located?
Atascadero, California, which is below San Luis Obispo and above Santa Barbara, the beautiful, beautiful rolling hill neighborhood.
And income producing?
No,
But they're ready to be developed,
yes,
and you foreclosed on them.
yes, we had, I think, 4 subsets up there that we've been able to dispose of, and this was the last one.
Okay. National Financial Lending LLC. What's the asset?
That's a membership interest in the limited liability company, National Financial Lending.
Okay. And based in where? Where's National Financial Lending?
Remember, that's the limited liability company
Based.
that Point Center is the managing
Got
member
it.
of.
Based in Irvine?
No,
Lisa
Lisa
Oviedo.
Oviedo.
Oh, Leafs Oviedo, okay.
I think what he's trying to find out though is what assets NFL has, if any.
Well, you said
Well,
membership
NFL has an entire portfolio of pooled assets.
pooled assets,
It's-
consisting of
I've already
what?
described National Financial Lending to you, the limited liability company.
Right.
That just means that Point Center has a little tiny fraction in that pool.
But the pool is comprised of
Dozens
hard
of loans.
of loans secured by property.
Real
I-
property.
Okay. And income producing, I would assume, right? Your interest, the Point Center's interest, is that making?
Yeah, that's Point Center has servicing fees
Okay.
that are owed and due and continuing to be owed and due.
Okay, what about Parks Scottsdale LLC? Is that in Scottsdale, Arizona?
Yeah, that's in Scottsdale. That was a condo conversion project, apartments to condominiums in a well-positioned neighborhood, and sold very successfully until the meltdown, and at this point it's coming back fairly nicely.
And these are,
The
so
market
there,
over there.
how many units? You know?
I think it was like 8, something like 8.
Income producing?
Yes.
And then Point Center Mortgage Fund, one we have discussed.
Yeah, that's very much like, my memory is that when we started each one of these programs, we had to start with like 25,000. We had to put a little money in it just to, for regulatory approval.
Okay.
So I put the money in there and left it in there, and it's still in those programs.
And it's producing income.
Yes.
And then, okay, loan to the Preserve LLC. What is that?
I need Lynn's help on that.
Huh?
I believe this is advanced fees for the purpose of handling that. We don't own that asset. That asset's in bankruptcy, in Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and we've had to advance fees to pay for ongoing litigation to try to free up the property and foreclose on it. And this is...
Let me back up. We have something called Loan to the Preserve LLC. That is the name of a limited liability company?
No, if the Preserve...
Oh, the Preserve LLC is the name of the company.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
That's the bar.
That one hasn't been foreclosed on yet.
I see. All right, just a second, ma'am, just a
Yeah,
second.
no, it's the borrower.
Okay, I
It's not
understand.
us.
Okay, the Preserve, right. So what is the Preserve LLC? What is the Preserve?
It's a piece of property in Beaumont. It's a fairly large piece of property.
Okay.
And we're not the owner. It's a problem asset that we've been attempting to foreclose now for 4 years and continuing litigation to free it up to regain the capital of the investors.
Okay, I understand.
So
And where's it located again?
in Beaumont, off of the
Beaumont,
60 freeway.
California. And what does the land consist of?
I think it's about, 650 acres, 700 acres, right off of the 60 freeway to be developed into single-family residence and...
But it's undeveloped right now.
Yes. It had a fairly strong level of entitlements, and then when the borrower defaulted, the borrower let a lot of them lapse.
Okay, but it's not foreclosed on yet.
We're attempting to foreclose.
Trying to foreclose. All right, and then the last one here, you described it as 100% ownership in 26 undeveloped residential lots in Victorville, subject to senior lien of Ing Bank. Okay?
Yes.
So pretty much there's no LLC, right? It's just a...
Yeah, it's just a ownership of a piece of land in Victorville that has potential to be developed, and hopefully the market's improving.
And you own, Pacific Financial owns, Point Center Financial owns all of it?
Yes,
So that's an asset of Point Center Financial,
yes,
these 26 undeveloped lots. Okay? And for $2 million is the book value,
yes.
and it's not income producing, is it?
No.
Encumbered? I think the first lien on it.
No, he said income producing.
I said
Sorry.
Yeah.
income.
Sorry about that.
Okay. No, I think there's a first lien. Do we have anything else for that? Let me take a 5-minute break. If anybody needs to use the restroom or anything, they're at the elevator banks. But we're going to start in 5 minutes. Okay?
Okay.
I will.
All right, so we're back on the record. It's approximately 2:15 p.m.
Okay. Before I turn this over to...
What's the sound?
Noise.
Somebody's phone, maybe. Okay.
Yeah, before I turn this over to Ms. Daggert, I want to swear in your name, ma'am.
Gwen Melanson.
Gwen Melanson?
Yes.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay. You were sitting here while Mr. Harkey was going over the assets and liabilities of these limited liability companies that I was asking him about, weren't you?
Yes.
Is there anything he said that you need to correct?
Nothing he said incorrect. There are loans to some of these LLCs from its members that have been acquired over time to pay the expenses of the different companies. So they're member loans to the LLC. That would be the only other liabilities he didn't describe.
Okay, and what is your position with Point Center Financial? What is your position?
I'm the chief financial officer.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Okay. Mr. Bernice, could you please make your appearance?
Yes, my name's Jeff Benice, and I'm litigation counsel for Point Center.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'm going to turn this now over to committee counsel, Ms. Thaggart.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Harkey. Just as a general question, what assets are available to repay the creditors?
Over a period of time, we have receivables, which I think we provided an accrued receivable portfolio to you. And also, we have ongoing litigation with the Preserve, with First American Title, with TD Services, and Steve Cash, that are substantial dollars.
When we were looking at the list of assets previously, it has book values listed. Are those, have you had any, are those based upon the amount of the original loan?
I believe so.
Do you have any current values of the property?
No.
Have you received any offers for the purchase of any of the properties?
We have been ongoing marketing for the last 4 years, and we've closed quite a few transactions, and we are negotiating certain ones at this point.
Have any of the properties on the list that we were looking, Schedule B, number 14, interest in partnerships or joint ventures, have any of those been sold?
I believe okay, if they were on here, if they've been sold, they wouldn't be on here, so no.
Okay. Do you have any offers pending on any of the properties on this list?
No.
You haven't had any offers on Washington Avenue?
No.
Have you sent any letters out to any of the creditors that you have any offers on any of the properties listed on this list?
I'm going to object. When you say creditors, who are you referring to? I mean, this is
Okay, let me-
this is the Lloyd Chardon property. I know this is part of the litigation, I'm going to let you answer questions, but we have great reason to believe that you guys are being directed by Mr. Chardon and others, and by you focusing on that particular asset, that confirms our suspicion. So we're going to let you answer the questions, but to the extent it's going to get into what's going on in the state court litigation, there's going to be an objection.
Well, I'm just asking, I'm trying to determine the actual value of the assets that are listed on this. You have a book value, which may or may not reflect the actual value of the assets that are being represented to be available to the creditors.
That's correct.
Okay. Have you sent out any letters to any of the investors or anybody who owns any interest in any of the properties listed on Schedule B, number 14, that there are offers pending on the property?
No.
Have you also have service contracts, is that correct?
Servicing, not service.
Okay, servicing.
Servicing, in other words, ongoing servicing recurrable fees.
Of the servicing contracts that you have, how many are those that are for loans that are performing?
I have a schedule here that.
I think that if it helps you, Mr. Harkey, I gave her a copy of what Mr. Go sent me earlier today.
Right.
Is that it, Mr. Go?
Yes, I have a schedule here of accrued assets and all the assets and all of the servicing fees that are do Point Center.
The accrued servicing fees that I have appear to all be for REOs and REO LLCs, with the exception of trust deed loans to the preserve. Would that be accurate? Or
No,
Oh, wait. This is-
most of them are accrued servicing fees for REOs.
okay, you said no, most of them are accrued. Are any of the fees, the servicing fees that are listed on this sheet for performing loans?
I don't see any.
And is this a true and accurate representation of all the servicing, all the properties or loans for which you have servicing contracts?
Yes.
Are there any others that aren't listed on this?
No.
So is it fair to say then that none of the loans are performing?
At this point, that's correct.
Is there a possibility that any of the loans listed on this sheet could be performing in the future?
I doubt it.
And the servicing contracts that you have you ever had a third party evaluate their value, like for sale?
No.
Do you believe that the servicing contracts themselves would be an asset?
Well, they're an asset for Point Center to create an ongoing business and to pay the creditors.
Let's just look at, and I apologize, I just got this list when we sat down. If we look at Georgetown Commercial LLC, it's a piece of land in Texas. If that property were to sell for $3 million, let's say, would your fees be paid first from that sale?
The expenses and the property taxes would be paid first, and then our fees would be paid.
Is there anything in your list of liabilities where you showed all of the fees that were owed, all the outstanding expenses on each of these assets?
I don't know. I'd have to ask Gwen.
I believe that Gwen has been sworn in, is that correct?
She has.
Okay.
Well, let me just make an observation here. These assets are not assets of the bankruptcy estate. NFL is not an asset. It's not a part of the bankruptcy estate. These LLCs are not part of the bankruptcy estate. Point Center may have an ownership interest in one, or they may have rights to loan servicing fees, but these particular assets are not in this case here today. So I'm not sure exactly of the relevance of the question, but we'll see where it goes.
Well, you know, I'm happy to explain the relevance, Mr. Go. First of all, this 22% interest that Point Center has, that 22% interest is an asset of the estate, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So to the extent that there are excessive fees paid, that interest is diminished, correct?
Well, what
say that we have-
excessive
okay.
fees are you arguing?
Let's say that we
You're making
have-
litigation arguments again. I
Wait a
mean,
second.
Okay.
Let's say that we have, that
I'm not going to have hypotheticals. You
Georgetown...
can ask him questions. Okay. We'll answer the
Well,
questions.
you said that it wasn't relevant, so I'm more than happy to explain its relevance.
Okay, go ahead.
We're not going to answer any
That
litigation.
Mr. Denise.
It's not a litigation-based question. It has nothing to do with that, sir.
The word excessive fees is a litigation-based question. I heard
This is
about
not
2
civil
hours ago.
Oh.
court.
Okay. You know what?
I don't even need to tell me where I'm at.
There's no judge here to rule upon the objections, so we'll just continue. I mean, if you want him to take the Fifth Amendment or advise him to do that, that's fine.
Fifth Amendment, I mean, what?
Well, let's proceed on. If Georgetown Commercial were to sell today for $3 million, what would be paid before there was any return to your interest on the LLC? What would be paid
Already
at
answered the
point?
question, the management fees and the property taxes.
And, yes, management fee and property taxes.
I believe that Ms. Nemelson, and I apologize for mispronouncing your name, indicated that there could be additional fees that are owed.
Well, there could, if there's any outstanding property taxes or any of the investors who are in that particular transaction have advanced fees to cover the expenses and property taxes.
Okay. And is there a list somewhere of all the fees that have been advanced? That was my question. That's why we're here.
And I answered already. I said, I don't know. So, you know, you asked me once, I said, I don't know, and so that's where we are again.
Okay, well, I would like to get a list of all the fees. I'd like to be able to look at each asset, what property taxes, what other fees are owed on it, and then what management fees are claimed to be accrued. Fair enough?
That's fine.
Well, the management fees claimed to be accrued are right there. They're already on here.
But I'm saying I'd like to be able to do a chart so that I can look at it in its totality, not individually. Do you have any schedules or any charts that show any anticipated annual income in the next 12 months from the loan servicing?
No.
In your projections of what Point Center is going to make in the next 12 months, what percentage of that income is from loan servicing?
I don't know, you said there were any projections. There's been some 90-day projections that were filed with the bankruptcy court. What?
In your 90-day projections, what percentage of the income is from loan servicing?
Accrued loan servicing, most of it.
Okay. And I think we've established that there is no ongoing loan servicing for performing loans. Is that correct?
Minimal.
When you say minimal, what would that be?
Couple of loans. I just can't remember, but it's remote.
Okay, so are those loans then not on this list?
I can certainly go back and report to you if I have any outstanding loans that are active
Okay, fair enough, sir.
in very short order.
Fair enough. Did PCF ever establish any reserves to repay the mortgage note program investors?
That was not required and was not required, not disclosed, and we had adequate cash flow. We had a $10 million line of credit, and we had investors coming and going. But it was not required.
So is the answer no?
The answer is no.
Thank you. Have you had any valuations done of any of the REO properties after they were foreclosed upon?
No.
Have you had anyone give you any opinions of value of any of the REO properties?
No.
Have you spoken with any real estate brokers about selling the REO properties?
I have a servicing manager that regularly communicates with brokers about selling properties.
And what's his name?
His name is Rene Esparza, E-S-P-A-R-Z-A.
And does Mr. Esparza ever discuss with you any conversations he's had with brokers about the valuation of any of the REO properties?
I don't recall.
do you ever have Mr. Esparza prepare any reports of values on the REO properties?
No,
Are any of the REO properties currently listed for sale with any real estate brokers?
yes.
And which ones are listed for sale?
Without asking Renee, I don't really recall. A number of these have been listed for sale, but I would have to, again, report that to you.
Okay, I would be interested in getting the information of all the properties that are listed for sale and the listing price, broker names, that type of thing.
Give us a list of questions and we'll most likely be able to answer all of them for you.
Okay. When you, on the accrued servicing fees, where it says total paid through 2/19/13, were those payments that PCF had actually received?
Is that the same? Is this?
You guys want to look at, this is the.
I'm sorry.
Here you go. I did it on two sides, Mr. Harkey, so the first page that Mr. Go sent me is on one side, and then the flip side is the second page. So I think she's talking about the second page.
I don't know, I'm talking about
It
the
is.
first or the
Yeah,
second.
it's
The smaller one.
the smaller one, and it says total paid through February 19th, 2013. And for instance, I think she's talking about Georgetown Commercial Center. The figure is $418,729. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, those are already paid to Point Center.
Okay. And over what period of time were those paid?
I think since, I don't know.
Would that be
I'd have to
since the
ask-
inception?
Yeah, since the inception of that transaction.
And the balance due as of 2/1/13, is that the unpaid balance?
That's the accrued servicing fee due to Point Center Financial.
And it has additional per increases of 1% from 10/1/08 to 2.13. And could you explain that to me, that column? I just don't understand it.
At the point that the market effectively crashed in '07, our cash flow diminished, and we, in certain programs, had the unilateral right to increase the fees. National Financial Lending, we had the right to take up to 3%, so we basically elected 2.5%, so those are accrued fees. And Mortgage Fund 1, we had the right to take more. And all of the rest of the fractional note holders, we sent out a vote to, requesting permission to increase our fees from 1.5% to 2.5%. I think we got an overall 70% or more approval. So these fees are in excess of what the original fees were, but they are owed to Point Center at this point.
So your claim then would be, I would add both of those columns together. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. So that the accrued fees on Georgetown Commercial are 1.4 million roughly?
Yes.
And so if I take the columns down on the bottom, the 12 million and the 8 million, that would be the total amount of accrued fees that Point Center's owed.
Yes.
And are any of these paying fees on an ongoing basis right now?
No. Well, excuse me. Are you talking about these fees or any of the programs?
These fees right here.
Okay. I don't believe so.
Okay. What programs are paying fees right now?
National Financial Lending,
And what is the monthly or annual income from National Financial Lending? Sorry.
put that in your list of questions and I can get that to you.
Okay.
And Mortgage Fund 1.
What is the total asset value of National Financial Lending today?
You'd have to add that to your questions.
What percentage of National Financial Lending is invested?
Well, all of it.
Hang on a second. Hang on a second.
When you,
Hang on a second. The debtor's got a schedule that it owns 0.00100% of National Financial Lending LLC. It's not in bankruptcy, so I don't know the relevance of these questions. What's the point? Debtor claims it has a book value of $7,000.
I'm not sure I have to answer that, Mr. Go. I'm not sworn in.
We're going to answer the question regarding Point Center, okay? We're going to answer the question regarding Point Center. If you want to send us a list of some additional questions, but if you want to do your discovery from Mr. Charlton here today, we're not going to do that, okay?
This has nothing to do with Mr. Charlton.
This has nothing to do with Mr.
Answer the
Charlton.
question, Ron.
I said hello to Mr. Charlton. That's
fine.
the extent of my conversation with Mr. Charlton.
Okay. So tell me, what's the relevance of, what was your question? What are the assets of National Financial Lending LLC?
Correct.
Alter ego.
No way.
Alter ego, there we go.
You know what?
The complaint is the point that Point Center is the alter ego of Mr. Harkey. You can inquire about that if you'd like.
You know, it's a very simple question.
Well, answer the question regarding the assets and liabilities of Point Center Financial. We're here, and we've answered Mr. Cadding's question, and we'll do so, and we'll continue to do so.
Let's talk about the LLC management for a while. On Point Center and on... Point Center is the manager of NFL, correct?
yes,
And it receives a fee for being the manager, correct?
it receives a servicing fee.
And you don't know, as you sit here today, what that fee is. Is it 2.5%?
You'd have to put that in your list of questions.
Is-
I'm not going to speculate.
And is the percentage of servicing fees that Point Center receives from NFL based upon the total amount of assets?
It's based on the total amount that people invested.
And is there a difference between the amount that people invested and the amount of assets?
Well, you'd have to define what assets are. I'm telling you, it's based on what people invested.
Okay.
So if you want to delineate ask the question, I don't know.
Okay, so
You're
if
asking a question.
people invested $100 million, Point Center would then be entitled to $2.5 million annually?
Well, I think the easiest thing is to provide counsel with a copy of the operating agreement and the servicing agreement.
But this is why it's relevant how much is okay.
Well, no,
How much is invested?
I'm
Because
just
it
trying to
has to
help
do
you out,
100% with the fee that it's entitled to.
No, this is a Lloyd Charlton question. I hear about it every
It
day.
has nothing to do with it. You know what?
All right, everyone, hold on a second.
Insulting.
Now listen, we're going to maintain decorum here. If I have any more yelling from the audience, I'm going to ask you to leave. Okay? Now, we're going to do this in a nice, professional way. I'm going to ask a question, and either Mr. Go or Mr. Harkey or Mr. Go can designate Mr. Bernice if he feels that something he can answer that he can answer. But we're not going to have everybody yelling and carrying on like this. Otherwise, I'm going to clear the room. We'll continue this without you. Go ahead.
What I was going to finish is the easy way to answer your question is we'll provide you with a copy of the operating agreement if you don't already have it, the servicing agreement if you don't already have it, and then the accountings that are sent out monthly to every investor or have been regularly sent to every shareholder in NFL that reflects the fees, costs, et cetera. When Mellison has had that prepared, there's schedules of that, and how the calculation is made.
And is the NFL current in the payment of its fees to Point Center Financial?
NFL doesn't pay fees. It's a servicing fee.
The servicing fee. Is NFL current in the payment of the servicing fee to Point Center Financial?
You'd have to ask that question, put that in your list of questions.
And how about the second mortgage fund? Is it current in the payment of its
Put that in your
fees?
list of questions.
Just, I mean, all Mr. Harkey is saying is that way you'll have an update as of, say, today's date for this accounting information. Is that acceptable, Glenn?
Yes.
Could you explain, let me ask this. Are there any written loan agreements between you and PCF for loans that you have allegedly made to PCF?
Yes.
And when were those loan agreements documented?
I'd be happy to get you what I have, so add that to your list of questions.
Could you explain Calcom Capital to me?
This is the bankruptcy of PCF, and it's not the bankruptcy of Calcom. Is this another litigation matter, Jeff?
Yes.
It has nothing to do with litigation.
It has everything to do with litigation. So why don't you explain what that for us, Jeff? So,
The issue of Calcom has been asserted in the pending litigation. It's in trial down the street. It has nothing to do with, as I understand it, the bankruptcy of
Excuse me, Mr. Bernice, what is the harm in just answering what is Calcom? I mean,
There's no problem just answering that.
well, what is Calcom? Capital Inc. Mr. Harkey?
Calcom is basically a newly startup mortgage brokerage that has a totally different business model than Point Center Financial.
And it's not related at all to Point Center Financial?
Other than I'm the shareholder, but it's a different business model, different books and records, no commingling, nothing related.
And different investors too?
Well, it doesn't really have any. I mean, there may be two small $50,000 loan and a $200,000 loan, but it's not a...
Who formed Calcom?
I did.
When did you form it?
2010.
Miss, you don't mind if I ask a few questions?
Oh, please do. They seem to like your questions better.
Well, were assets, I'm sure the answer, I mean, I kind of think what the answer is going to be here, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Were assets from the debtor, Point Center Financial or its affiliates, transferred to Calcom from January 1st, 2011 to the present time?
No.
I think there was one question on the statement of financial affairs where the loan servicing, the investors in a loan fired Point Center, hired Calcom. It was disclosed in the statement of financial affairs in 23. Is that right?
I will double check for you. 23 says none.
No, that's it.
I think you're right, though. There was something in the statement of financial affairs, but
But anyway, Mr. Harkey, it's your testimony today under oath that there was no funds used from Point Center Financial. I know I kind of restricted it to January 1st, but at any time, even before then, any funds from Point Center Financial ever go into Calcom to operate it or fund it or get it going or anything? No. Okay. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Go ahead.
No problem. Were any assets from Point Center Financial transferred to Calcom?
No.
Were any rights of Point Center Financial transferred to Calcom?
What do you mean rights?
Any servicing agreements?
I think I had a group of investors and a borrower communicate with me that they were sick of being harassed by Lloyd Charton, and they were sick of being harassed by a guy by the name of Murray Helm in San Diego, and that if I didn't change the servicing, they were going to change me and get rid of me, because there's ongoing harassment from these two individuals in trying to lien these payments.
And do you recall the name of which entity that was?
What do you mean?
Or which asset entity? How would you refer to the servicing that was transferred?
You mean the loan?
The loan name, yeah.
The loan name, Enterprise Court.
And is that the only asset or right to an asset or right to income of PCFs that was transferred over to Calcom?
Yes.
Nothing else?
Nothing else.
Were any monies that were due to PCF transferred to Calcom?
No.
What broker commissions has PCF received in the last 2 years?
Put that on your list of questions.
When one of the REO properties is sold, does PCF take a brokerage commission?
Periodically, yes, and periodically, no.
And what would be the difference?
Whether or not we list it with an outside third-party broker, or whether or not we transact the sale within the company. The relevant documents indicate that we have a right to take a brokerage fee, a market value brokerage fee.
And market value, that's what the property sells for, correct?
No, I'm sorry, a standard industry brokerage fee.
So
What other comparable brokers would charge in the form of a fee, we have a right to, in some cases, take that if we're the ones that transact the transaction.
and that would be based upon a percentage of the sales price, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any arrangements where you would take a broker's fee that weren't based upon a percentage of the sales price?
No.
Could you explain the difference between NFL Inc. and NFL LLC?
NFL Inc. is a company that I've had for 20, 25 years that really doesn't have an ongoing business other than kind of approved books and records and paying some bills and things like that.
And how does NFL Inc. get its money?
Well, it doesn't really make, it's not an ongoing firm that generates profit. It's just a company that I've had for 20, 25 years.
Has any money from PCF gone into NFL Inc.?
What do you mean gone into it? You mean a general account? No.
How about an investment account, a shareholder capital account?
No.
Has PCF paid NFL Inc. any fees?
No.
Has any money for any purpose from PCF been transferred to NFL Inc.?
No.
So then NFL Inc., any money that was in there would come from you personally?
Well, we have other business interests outside Point Center.
Excuse me, Mr. Lally, if you want to come up and sit to hear better, you can welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's-
I can speak
No, no, no.
louder. I
It's okay. I noticed he was straining
have a very
and
loud
trying to
voice
hear.
and I can project if anyone's having problems, and I apologize if I'm not.
Thank you.
In the last 5 years, have some cars been transferred from Point Center Financial to you personally or another entity of yours?
Yes, about 4 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, I had some leases, I think on 2 or 3 cars that were effectively upside down. And I think at the end of '07, I transferred them to myself personally because I couldn't sell them and get enough money to retire the leases.
And the cars were originally in the name of Point Center, is that correct?
Yes, and they were all refinanced to pay off the loans, the loans were in excess of the market value of the cars.
Did you have any formal valuation done of the value of the cars before they were transferred?
Yeah, I looked at Blue Book and yes,
You looked at the Blue Book. Did you have any third-party formal valuation done of the value of the cars?
5 years ago?
Yes.
No,
And you say there were 3 cars?
yes.
What cars were those?
Actually, there was a Sprinter van and two trucks.
Any other cars?
I think in 2007, at the point when the market collapsed, I think I had 3 cars then that I transferred off that had leases that were underwater.
And what cars were
I
those?
can't remember what they were.
Was one a Ferrari?
Yes,
Were there 2 Ferraris?
one was sold.
How about a Rolls Royce?
Yes,
Were there any motorcycles?
no,
Was it transferred to an entity called Road Scowlers or something like that?
in 2007, no, it was transferred to me personally.
Okay. And later, did you transfer any cars over to an LLC by the name of Road Scowlers?
Later,
And when was that?
Just by the way, where do you get this information from?
It's public information.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay.
it's not public
This
information.
is 2007, right?
It's not public information.
Okay.
It's amazing what you can find on the internet these days.
Yeah.
It's not public information.
I'm trying to understand the legal theory. 2007.
Were there any other cars that were-
It's Lloyd Charter legal theory.
I'm sorry,
Just focus.
let's just get to the questions and,
Well, I could object on relevancy, because what is the statute of limitation on fraudulent conveyance action is 4 years, so you're not going to reach back 5.5 years in any event, but, okay, I'll answer the question. We can talk about 20 years ago if you want to talk about that too, but let's go ahead and go forward.
that's fine, whatever.
I know sounds real nice and sexy for your audience, but we're talking 5.5 years ago, but go ahead.
You want to stand up and give a speech, sir?
Yes, sure, you're doing it right now.
Let's just focus.
Yeah, let's focus on what's relevant for today.
Did Point Center at some point in time own a Learjet?
No,
Did Point Center ever pay any expenses for a Learjet?
yes.
And when was that?
In between February 4th of 2007 and October of 2007.
And those are the only times that any expenses were paid by Point Center for a Learjet?
Yes,
And was the Learjet sold at some point in time?
yes.
And who,
Learjet also crashed, by the way, after it was sold.
was the Learjet insured?
Yes.
Objection, relevancy.
Well, if it crashed, then there was an
Way after
insurance
you-
payment.
Many years after it was sold. We're going back now 5-6 years ago again, okay?
Once again,
Maybe I can help you. I think, didn't we produce records to Mr. Charton? That there's a complete notebook about the Learjet.
you know, sir,
I'm just trying to help
you keep
you.
making a reference that I have records from Mr. Charton. I
that's-
don't, okay? I've gone through the schedules, I've gone through public information, and I have my questions.
Okay.
So if you'll please just let me ask my questions, it'll go much faster.
Well, I was actually doing something a little bit easier. We'd be happy to provide you the same notebook about
Okay.
that particular.
I would appreciate that, sir. Thank you. What does Investment Data Systems do?
It's a holding company. It
And-
holds some intellectual property and some assets.
Is it a holding company of Point Center Financial?
No,
What is it a holding company of?
it's a company that I've had since, I believe, 1979.
What is it a holding company of?
What's the relevance?
It came up, and frankly, it came up in some of the information that I saw when I was doing public searches, and it had a connection to Point Center Financial that showed on my my research, and so I'm just asking what it is.
Tell me the first
We
question.
answered the question, okay? We'll move
Okay.
on. I mean,
You
Mr.
said it was a
Harkey-
holding company. What is it a holding company of?
It has nothing to do with Point Center Financial. And it's been around since 1979.
What other companies do you have an ownership in, Mr. Harkey?
Object, relevancy.
Alter ego, sir?
So we go, what?
Oh, we go what?
Mr. Harkey, what other companies do you have an ownership interest in?
Object, I don't think he just.
Well, I would have to say that we're kind of going a little bit beyond the scope here. And it doesn't look like we're going to get an answer, so I think we should just move on.
We're prepared to answer relevant questions regarding the assets and liabilities of Point Center Financial, but we're not going to go on a fishing expedition of everything with regard to Dan Harkey, who's not in bankruptcy.
Okay, fair enough. I'll move on. I'll reserve my rights to those questions. I believe you indicated that 6th and Upas was a property in San Diego, is that correct?
Yes.
And 6th and Upas is paying the fees for Mr. Wexler, is that correct?
I'd have to ask when. How did that name come up?
It was in one of the
It's
pleadings.
in the employment application. Mr. Wexler has been employed to pursue the appeal of the Brewer judgment. That's in his order. The order's been entered and authorizing his employment, and that's what it states.
Is 6 and Upas, or Upas, and I apologize for that, a defendant in the Brewer litigation?
No.
Does 6th and Upas have any benefit from the Brewer appeal?
I'd have to consult my lawyer. and put that in your list of questions.
I'm going to pass the questioning right now to any of the creditors that would like to ask questions. I believe Mr. Wally might be one.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Harkin, in the past 2 years, what have been your fees paid by the debtor?
So you're Lloyd Charton's personal lawyer?
What are your fees? You don't get
Oh,
to
me,
answer.
fee? You mean
Yeah,
me
yeah,
personally?
you don't get to ask the question, sorry.
Well, hang on, just for the record, and Dave and I are friends, but Mr. Charlton's on the creditors committee, and the creditors committee counsel is asking questions. So I'm not sure it's appropriate for there to be double teaming here, but
I haven't taken a salary in 5.5 years.
Have you taken any bonuses in the past 5.5 years?
No.
In the past 5.5 years, has the debtor paid any of your personal expenses?
No, other than an accidental car wash or something, may or may not be one or two. But in 5 years, sir, I've worked for no compensation to solve the problems in Point Center, and
Has the debtor paid for any of your mortgage payments in the past 5 years?
no,
Has the debtor paid for your daughter's college education at all?
no,
So the Point Center Financial didn't make any payments, for example, to USC for your daughter's college education?
no,
Did Point Center Financial make any payments to any other entity so that that entity would pay for any of your personal expenses or your daughter's college education?
no.
Dan, when did you graduate?
You know what?
No, just when did you
She
graduate?
graduated in 2007.
Well, that raises the issue that I was talking about. These are all for the benefit of the
This
debtor,
is-
and that's fine.
that's
Did-
okay.
It's okay.
Did the debtor, in the past 3 years, has the debtor bought any properties? Properties in the debtor's name, so that the debtor's on title?
You mean Point Center?
Correct, yes, please.
No.
No? Okay. In the past 3 years, did the debtor, in any capacity, foreclose on any properties, whether they're properties listed in the schedules or not?
Well, just for the record, the center isn't really the one that forecloses. The beneficiary would either trust foreclose, and I assume that's what your question is. So.
That is my question. Well, actually, it's both. Did the debtor itself foreclose on any properties in the past 3 years?
I think you'd better put that question in writing, the debtor foreclosing on property.
Because it could have foreclosed in the capacity that we have.
Well, that's my point, is it's kind of a, Point Center has foreclosed on many properties in its capacity of service or managing members of entities who are lenders.
Okay, let me ask you about the Mission Ridge Ladera Ranch property. In your Schedule B, it says that the debtor has a 2.857% interest in that property. Is that correct?
I don't recall
Okay.
if that's what my schedule said.
Okay. And was that under the mortgage pool, the note, or the NFL program?
I don't recall.
Okay. Who has resided at that property in the past 5 years?
I believe, if that's the one, that my Japanese, if I'm, to be honest with you, I don't remember, because I didn't really handle it, Japanese.
Okay. And so, for how long did Mr. Benice live at that property?
I don't really recall. That's certainly a question that I'd be happy to answer in your list of questions.
Okay. What would, in the past, let's say 3 years, for example, what do you believe the market value lease for that property would be on a monthly basis? The property's in Covenant Hills, right?
Be happy to answer the question, put it in writing.
Okay. Do you know what the market lease for that property would be in the past 2 or 3 years?
Put that in writing.
Okay. Do you know what Mr. Benice, scratch that, did Mr. Benice pay any rent when he was living there?
Yes.
And how much was that on a monthly basis,
If my
please?
memory serves me, sir, I think it was like $7,000 a month.
And would that be reflected on any of the books of Point Center Financial?
No,
Why not?
because the asset doesn't belong to Point Center Financial.
Okay, but Point Center Financial has an interest in the property, right?
Well, in a program, I mean, you would have received it on a schedule, and you would receive relative books and records. So that's another question. Ask what you want.
So then when rent was paid, to whom was it paid?
The entity that owns the piece of real estate.
And would that entity be entitled, quote, Mission Ridge Ladera Ranch LLC?
Yes,
Okay, and so then does Mission Ridge Ladera Ranch LLC have a separate bank account?
I believe they do.
Okay, so then the tenant would make a payment made payable to Mission Ridge, and that check presumably would be deposited into the bank account of Mission Ridge Ladera Ranch LLC, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, and who maintains the books and records of that LLC?
Gwen Melanson.
Okay, and physically the books and records would be on Argonaut, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The books and records then of that LLC would be at the Argonaut address, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and do you know the bank at which Mission Ridge Ladera Ranch LLC did business?
it used to be Pacific Mercantile. I think it's now, I can't remember the name of the bank, but it's a new bank.
Okay. All these LLCs that Mr. Cadigan asked you about on your Schedule B, did they all have their own separate bank accounts, or were the monies just put into a general operating account?
Each one has its own separate account.
Okay. And was it your testimony earlier that these properties that Mr. Cadigan went over, the raw land and the condos, for example, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did you say that none of the properties had been listed for sale?
No. What I said is we would have to communicate with Renee Esparza, and that would be subject to a question.
Okay. The Murrieta property, I think you said that the debtor had a 0.55% interest, is that correct? I'm sorry.
If it's on the schedule.
Yeah, Washington Avenue, Murrieta, let me say it
Yeah,
correctly. Okay.
It's on the schedule.
Okay, and then in your schedules, you said the book value as of December 31st of last year was $36,405. So the $36,405 represents the debtor's 0.5% interest. Am I reading that correctly?
I think you are.
Okay. Didn't the debtor and/or Washington Avenue, Murrieta, within 6 months send out a letter to all the investors saying that you had received an offer for $100,000 for that property?
I don't think so. I don't have that recollection.
Okay, so if I produced a letter to that effect, is it your position that the letter's manufactured, or you just don't recall the letter?
Well, I'm not the servicing manager, and if somebody sent in a ridiculous offer, whether it was planted or not, it's not anything we're going to pay attention to.
Okay. Well, what if your name is on the letter and it said that you received an offer for $100,000? My question is, and the letter exists. Let me represent to you that the letter exists. I'm not just manufacturing this. So if the letter exists, here's my question: why would a letter go out saying that the fair market value and you received an offer of $100,000 when you're saying here that the debtor's interest of 0.5% is worth $36,000?
Somebody could make an offer based on the fact that there's income on that property for the cell tower. If a letter went out, I don't happen to have a recollection. If we are disclosing that there was an offer.
Maybe just so I'm clear, are you saying, Mr. Wally, that there's a letter that Point Center sent out that says the property was worth $100,000? Or are you saying that there's a letter, and we're very familiar with many letters going out to investors where there's an update, and it says there was a $100,000 offer that was made that was rejected?
I don't think the letter said that the offer was rejected. I think it said that there was an offer for $100,000.
And Mr. Harkey said it wasn't sold, so obviously it was rejected. I mean, this isn't a letter that says anything about value, though, correct?
I don't recall.
Okay, so the letter
I'm just
doesn't
asking
bear
about,
on-
I'm just asking about the veracity of the letter in relation to the schedule signed under penalty of perjury and whether these schedules are accurate.
Well, what does a third party's offer of $100,000 have to do with Mr. Harkey's determination of the value of an asset? Just out of curiosity.
Mr. Harkey, you said that the debtor has servicing contracts, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and are these for REO properties only?
No, they're for everything in the portfolio.
Okay. And when you say everything in the portfolio, do you mean that would include REO properties, properties that the debtor was involved in foreclosing on, as well as performing assets? Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. And is there a difference in the servicing fees between REO properties and performing assets?
No.
Okay. Well, if the property is an REO, is it producing any income?
I don't know what you mean by producing income.
If the property is an REO, does it produce any income? Whether it's a commercial property, a residential property, is it producing income after there's a foreclosure sale?
You'd have to ask that question in writing. Some yes and some no.
Okay. Well, then if there is an REO that's producing income, who would be making the payments? Is it a former tenant?
That's a broad question of all the dozens of
Well,
assets.
it could be a joint venture partner, for example, and the agreement is
I
that
mean,
there's
it's,
servicing fees paid during the development of the property.
If it's an income producing property, it pays the income
Okay.
to the entity.
Indio Citrus Ranch.
And if it's an income producing REO property, why hasn't there, scratch that, if it's an income producing REO property, on any of those properties, has the debtor initiated any unlawful detain or eviction proceedings against the former borrower of the property?
I don't understand the question.
I don't either.
The question is very simple, it's very straightforward. The question is, once there's been a foreclosure, why hasn't there been an eviction?
These are large.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Benice, I'm asking the debtor the question.
Just so the record.
And the debtor's required to
Hold on,
answer the
people,
question.
people. Just so the record doesn't, because if this is going to be transcribed, the poor reporter's going to say inaudible person, unaudible, I'm going to get all this unidentified person. Please, just, Mr. Bernice, just say Jeff Bernice and then say, Mr. Harkey, I think we pretty much know your voice, but why don't we just one more time so that for Mr. Bernice who isn't talking that much, if you could just identify yourself.
Well, I can ask the question again. And
But it would be helpful, David.
Mr. Harkey can answer it. And just to make it simple, most, if not all, the properties that are identified on the schedule, these are large, undeveloped projects that were in development phases. So they're all at different phases of commercial development, multiple home building, residences, things of that nature, subdivisions.
And that was Mr. Bernice
That's
speaking.
Jeff
for the record.
Bernice speaking.
Mr. Harkey, in the past 3 years, can you tell me what properties in which investors in any of the 3 or 4 programs, which properties did the borrowers default and a foreclosure sale occurred?
We've had many.
Okay, thank you. Let me follow up with that then. On the properties on which there was a foreclosure sale, have any of the investors been repaid any of their investment for that particular property?
Yes.
Okay. And can you give me 2 or 3 examples of properties that were foreclosed upon which thereafter investors did receive a return on their investment?
Give you a schedule. You already have a schedule, but I can give it to you again.
Please. No, I'm asking you just to give me a couple of examples.
No, I don't recall.
You don't recall?
No.
Okay. Do you recall in the past 3 years how many foreclosures there were?
Does this have to do with Point Center's activity in the foreclosure and what fee it might generate?
No, where I'm going is, Mr. Bernice, where I'm going is, what properties were foreclosed upon in which investors had money invested, and after the foreclosure sale, what properties generated some return for the investors? That's where I'm going.
Okay, but the problem is, what does that have to do with Point Center?
Point Center was involved in all these properties.
Oh, no, but Point Center had a very distinct position. For example, NFL, Point Center is just a manager.
Great,
NFL is
then-
the entity, and most of the properties on here, a lot of them were NFL and/or NFL assets. And so, if you want to ask Mr. Harkey about a particular Point Center controlled property where it's in fact on the deed of trust, you can do so. But the questions you're asking are not really relevant to the bankruptcy at all.
And this is David Malley. Relevance isn't a legal basis.
Well, it doesn't have anything to do with it.
Excuse me, I wasn't done. I didn't interrupt you, so give me some
Okay.
courtesy. Relevance under 341A isn't a basis to object.
Well, the basis of object is the question has nothing to do with an issue of property
Okay.
estate.
You can still answer the question.
He's
And
not- he's not answering.
It has something to do with the estate, because, let me follow up with a question. Did Point Center Financial, after the foreclosure sale, receive any fees, regardless of what you call the fee? I don't care if it's a bozo or the clown fee. Did Point Center Financial receive any fee whatsoever on any of these foreclosed properties? That's a legitimate question.
That's the question.
That's correct, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, and then the follow-up question is, was the management fee based upon, I'm sorry, was the fee based upon the amount foreclosed upon, the amount of the investors, the fair market value, or something else? What was the fee based upon, please?
It varies. I can't answer that. It varies. Every single one is different.
Every program has documents identifying the fees. We'd be happy to provide you a notebook with each program's documents.
Thank you. So for example, in the NFL program, what was the fee that Point Center received upon the foreclosure of a property?
It varies
It varies upon what, please?
on the particular asset and the sale price and the circumstances.
What do you mean by the circumstances, please? In other words, if it's a foreclosure sale, what circumstances would be different? You being Point Center or the investors are foreclosing on the note by the borrower, so what circumstances would
The
change?
investors in NFL aren't foreclosing on
So
anything.
what circumstances would change, sir, that would vary the fees?
Well, again, this is Jeff Benitez. Just to make certain we're clear on the question you asked about NFL, investors don't own anything in NFL except for a share of stock. When there's a foreclosure by NFL, there's a host of fees that might have been advanced with it, whether it's foreclosure costs to get a property, attorney's fees, reserves set aside for a particular piece of property, and the servicing fee that an NFL will between 1.5% and 2.5%. So that's why Mr. Harkey would have to have a schedule of the property you're asking about, because there are many variables and costs that would be recouped on foreclosure.
Mr. Harkey, in the monthly operating report that was filed by the debtor on April 25th of 2013, it says that for the month of March 2013, it said that the debtor had, quote, general sales of $266,022.66. What was sold, please?
That would be probably servicing fees.
So nothing, are you saying that nothing was sold, but the $266,000 are fees generated from servicing loans, correct?
I believe so. I'd have to ask Gwen.
Okay, so, I'm sorry. So for example, when I see general sales, I think of selling something. So, and so it's not a sale of something, it's income derived from the servicing fees?
I believe so.
Okay. And the servicing fees, is this is for all the properties in which Point Center is servicing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The office on 7 Argonaut, the lease payment is 20, I'll round it up, 27,000 a month, correct?
Something like that.
It's a hair under, but I'm rounding up for a few $100.
Yes.
Okay. And does Point Center, and how big is that office space? How many square feet, please?
Well, it's about 10,000.
And how many employees does Point Center currently have?
We have about 20, and we used to have up to 75 before
And,
07.
oops, sorry. And is there a lot of empty space at the office now? As a reduction of the employees?
I wouldn't say there's a lot of empty space. I mean, it's
Okay.
It needs to be cleaned up, if you will.
Okay. And Point Center Financial, it makes a lease payment every month. Is it to a company called Venture Argonaut?
Yes.
Okay. And who owns Venture Argonaut, please?
The Harkey Family Trust.
Okay. And does Point Center have any title interest in that property?
No.
Okay. Is the property owned solely by the Harkey Family Trust?
Yes.
For how long has Point Center Financial been paying the $26,755 a month to the Harkey Family Trust?
Board of Venture Argonaut, I don't know who pays
Since 2005, and then the Harkey Family Trust pays the first trustee on it to the lender.
What? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Okay. The lease. When does the lease expire by its terms?
I don't recall.
Do you recall when the lease was entered into by the debtor?
Yes, when the building was completed by 2005, something like that.
Is it and I understand, I recognize your answer to the previous question, but do you recall, is it a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year lease with the debtor?
Don't recall.
No estimate whatsoever?
No.
Is the debtor current on the lease payments?
Yes.
Looks like it's a 15-year lease commencing November 1, 2005.
Okay. And again, I'm looking at the debtor's operating report. Is the debtor generating any income other than from the servicing fees? When was the last time the debtor generated a loan for investors?
Probably 3 years.
Okay. And my question was as to any program of the debtor. Same answer, roughly 3 years ago?
Yes.
Okay. So 1 second, please. The properties that are REOs, what's the debtor's intention with those properties?
Were you here when she was asking the questions?
What's the intention with the debtor with respect to the REO properties, please?
To either market them or build them or enter into a joint venture or something to dispose of the assets.
Does the debtor have any plans on any of the raw land to build anything on those properties?
We may.
Okay. For example, the 26 lots in Victorville, does the debtor currently have any plans to do anything with those lots other than sell them?
No.
So is it the debtor's intention to try to sell the lots?
The debtor's intention to try to sell the lots.
I'm sorry.
It's the debtor's intention to sell the lots.
Thank you. The debtor previously had an interest in a property in Palm Springs Country Club Investors LLC, correct?
I don't recall.
Was that property sold in January of 2017? January, roughly, that's a good one. January 2013?
Yes, it was sold some time ago.
Okay, and who was the seller of that property?
The entity that owned the property.
And who was the entity that owned the property, please?
I don't recall.
Okay. What is Point Center Financial's interest in that property? Was it a partial owner?
No.
Okay. Was it an investor with other investors?
You're asking a question that I don't really recall, but if Point Center had a fractional interest in the trust deed, and it may have, I just don't recall, and we subsequently created a limited liability company to hold the asset, Point Center would have had a fractional interest, a membership interest in that asset, and if the property sold, subsequently Point Center would have received a distribution, possibly, because I'd have to look. I don't really remember a distribution of some portion of the proceeds, if there were any.
Okay. Well, this sale was just about, for the sake of discussion, 28 days or so before the bankruptcy. So did Point Center Financial receive any money for any reason as a result of sale of this property in January 2013?
I don't recall.
Okay. You've seen the closing statement from escrow, I assume, haven't you?
No.
Okay. There was an entity, Point Center Financial created an entity called Palm Springs Country Club Investors LLC, correct?
I think that was the entity that held the property that was created for the purpose of holding that REO asset.
Okay. And so when the property was sold, sale proceeds would go to that Palm Springs Country Club Investors LLC, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know what happened with that money?
Without asking for an accounting of it, no,
Do you know if Point Center Financial received any of that money?
I don't.
Okay. And who's in charge of the books and records of Palm Springs Country Club Investors LLC?
Glenn Melanson.
Okay. And so then, do you know if well, then I'll ask you if you don't mind, do you know what happened to the proceeds, Ms. Melanson, from the sale of that property?
Yeah, they haven't been dispersed yet, and they're most likely going to go back to NFL LLC for advances made for carrying expenses for 7 years on the property.
Okay. And what would those expenses be, please? Just
Maintenance and other items, litigation with the city.
what is on the property?
It's a golf course, and it had a structure on it that was removed because it was being vandalized over and over and over again, and trees and things of that nature.
Okay. And so before the foreclosure sale, was Point Center Financial receiving servicing fees on a monthly basis,
No, not monthly,
quarterly basis?
from time to time.
Okay. And what was the source of those servicing fees, please?
A National Financial Lending as a member of the LLC.
Okay. So, for example, if Bill Smith invested in that NFL LLC for this particular property, and let's say Bill Smith invested $500,000, just for the sake of discussion, are you explaining and telling me that a percentage of that $500,000 investment was used to pay the servicing fees before the foreclosure sale?
No,
Okay, so then what was the source of the servicing fees if it didn't come from that investment, that person's investment?
came from National Financial Lending paying the servicing fee for its portion. And we also had cash calls back in 2008 where certain investors advanced funds to pay expenses, and I believe potentially some of those were servicing fees.
One moment, Mr. Canavan. Mr. Harkey, on March 29th of 2013, the NFL LLC sent a letter to, I don't know how many investors, and it was signed by Miss Melanson, and it's regarding 2012 tax forms and financial reporting for the year ending December 31st, 2012. Are you familiar with that?
I know Gwen sent it.
Okay. Are you familiar with generally speaking, are you familiar with the contents of the letter?
You'd have to ask Gwen.
Okay.
We've been sending those out for the last 20 years, and Gwen, I think, sends them either monthly or quarterly.
Okay.
So that would be a Gwen question.
Okay. Ms. Melanson, who prepared the letter?
I did.
Okay. And when you prepared the letter, what source of information did you use that went into the letter?
Well, for the tax forms, it was from the books and records, and all of the narratives were from the same books and records.
Okay. And did you speak to an accountant or a CPA or an EA before preparing the content of the letter?
Just for a second, David, what does the tax forms for the members of NFL LLC have to do with the debtor?
Yeah, I think it has an impact on the liability of the debtor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
We're going to be here for a week.
No, I'm almost done.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So did you obtain the information in the letter yourself?
Yes.
Okay. What is your educational background, please?
I'm going to start. We're not going to go through what we
That's
had
okay.
testimony about yesterday.
I wasn't wherever you were yesterday,
Well,
so.
your clients are, I'm sure he
So-
went through this with you. We're not going to.
Miss Melanson, what's your educational background,
She's not answering
please?
the question.
Are you
Has
instructing her
nothing
to not answer?
I'm telling her it has nothing to do with an
Well,
asset.
Mr. Bernice, here's the thing. You don't represent her, do you?
Oh, I absolutely do.
You do represent
Oh,
her.
yeah, she's the CFO of Quinn Center.
So
Who
you
Mr. Hart and Chardon had named as a defendant and dismissed because he knew he had no claim against her.
So
What is the
regardless of that-
harm-
regardless
just
of
a
that
second, Mr.
garbage-
Lally, what is the harm in just answering about her educational
Because
background?
it's not relevant to Point Center.
Well, again, 341 hearings are kind of a fishing expedition, and I think what Mr. Lally,
I'm going to the issue of mismanagement of the debtor, and for example, if Mr. Harkey or if Miss Melanson, and I'll give you a crazy hypothetical, if they never even graduated from elementary school, that person would not be competent to prepare this type of letter.
Unfortunately.
And it goes to the issue of filing a
She's
motion
not-
to appoint a Chapter
she's
11
not-
trustee, which
she's-
we all know is coming down the pipe.
She's not going to answer the question.
So she's required to answer the question.
Now,
She's
why
the
don't you-
CFO of the
What we'll do is we
debtor.
give the name of the SEC people who looked at the company for 2.5 years and looked at every financial statement and took her deposition. You can ask them about her competency and your motion. It's going to go nowhere.
Miss Melanson.
Ms. Melanson, why don't
Wait
you go
until your
ahead and
fees are,
explain
wait until your
the
fees are
long
denied.
history.
It's a whole other story. So, can I
hold on a
please?
second, Mr. Look, you seem like an intelligent person, articulate, okay? I'm sure you've had an elementary education, haven't you? Haven't you?
Yes, I.
And you went to high school,
Yes, I did.
and you probably have beyond that,
Some college here.
some college, okay.
Do you have a college degree?
Your Honor. They're asking questions, they already know the answers to these.
This one-
It's already been in the
All right.
pleadings.
If,
It's
listen,
Well, wait a minute, I want to make real clear about something. Yesterday, when Mr. Charton was in court, his lawyer, Mr. David Grant, went through the entire history of Ms. Melanson, as did I. We'll be happy, if Mr. Lally wants to pay for it, to provide for a transcript.
Thank you. I don't need to pay for it. I can get it otherwise.
Exactly. You can get it otherwise. That's the point.
And Mr. Harkey, what's your educational background, please?
Well, I graduated from Cal State Long Beach, California State University at Long Beach, with a degree in business administration and a minor in economics. And then I subsequently received an insurance adjuster / private investigator license. And I spent a few years being an insurance adjuster and fire and casualty, also automotive-related claims, also inland marine transit, and marine transit. And then I went back and got my teaching credential, and I obtained a life teaching credential. Taught high school for 5 years. And I started in the mortgage business in 1973, a residentially based mortgage company doing single-family home loans. I started a property management company and a real estate company in '74. An insurance agency, so I obtained a life and disability and a fire and casualty license and engaged in insurance sales. And I have owned 2 different escrow companies, both licensed by the Department of Corporations.
Okay.
And, pardon?
I said, okay, thank you.
What you
Well, you want to keep going?
No, that's good enough.
No, but
No,
you
it's-
talked about mismanagement. Dan, keep on going.
It's disappointing that you don't want it all.
No, keep on going.
Fine,
So it's real clear.
May I continue?
of course.
Okay.
Wait a minute, do we have the right to object on relevance also?
Absolutely.
Is it a two-way street?
Well, I think the issue is mismanagement. Mr. Harkey has to give his entire experience up to today. After living through 6 years of the greatest depression in real estate. and
Or is it the Greatest Depression, or is it fraudulent mismanagement of
Greatest
assets of
Depression.
investors?
Interesting.
Which is it?
Well, why don't you write this down on your notepad? Shareholder derivative action. Write that down.
Oh,
But I-
believe me,
excuse me,
there's a lot of derivative actions coming, trust me.
Write it down.
If I may continue, you asked the question.
Sure, go ahead, thank you.
Okay, 1973, I obtained a real estate agent's license. 1974, I obtained a real estate broker's license and started selling real estate and sold real estate out of my house and owned a third of a mortgage company and still taught. By 1975, I quit the teaching job and pursued the others. By 1980, I joined an organization called MI, Mortgage Institute, and started being on the educational committee for this industry. I've been in 4 different industry trade organizations. I've been president of a national trade organization called Commercial Real Estate Finance Forum, and I've taught hundreds of hours of education on various aspects of underwriting commercial loans, land lending, construction lending, third-party construction fund control agency. I've also attended all the classes for CCIM, the CCIM certification. I've written programs on 10-year cash flows with internal rate of return. I've also been responsible for writing various software packages for customer relations software-driven usages. I've also taught dozens and dozens and hundreds of hours. I've also had my own legislative advocate in Sacramento. I've worked on various forms of legislation to increase disclosure requirements for investors. I worked with Senator Kopp on SB 1554 and was instrumental in getting that turned into 10-232.5 of the Business Professions Code to enhance the disclosure requirements of investors in our industry. I've also killed 2 different bills of people trying to get in this industry without a license and without any fiduciary responsibility. AB 169 and AB 166.
My next question is the workers' compensation insurance. According to the operating report, it expired April 19th. Has that policy been renewed?
Didn't expire. If it did, it's been renewed.
Okay, because I'm looking at the policy expiration date, April 19th, 2013. So do you know if it's been renewed?
I'm sure it's been renewed.
Okay. In the past 5 years, how much money has Point Center Financial donated to your wife's campaigns, please?
None.
None.
Wait a minute, I'm asking the dad,
No.
Mr. Bernays.
Okay.
Okay.
None.
No money has been paid to your wife's campaign?
Point Center Financial?
Point Center Financial?
No.
No? Okay. Has any of these investor programs, have any funds come from those programs to pay for any of your wife's campaigns in the past 5 years?
No.
Okay. I have no further questions at this time. Thank you.
All right. I have a few questions. Well, let me finish up, and then I'm going to turn it over to the audience here. There was a couple of things I just needed to finish up on the schedules, Mr. Harkey. B35 on Schedule B, item 35. You want to probably better look at those.
And that's on page 22 of 176.
Let's see. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Litigation claims?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. There was a couple I just, one involved the Point Center Financial versus the Preserve LLC.
Yes,
What is that about?
we're suing the Preserve who has defrauded us for, I believe, $32 million, and we're attempting to foreclose on the property and to regain control of it.
I think there actually might be 2 lawsuits now.
Correct.
One
State action.
One in the bankruptcy court against, in front of Judge Blumont, and one also on the county superior court.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we're going to go to Pacific Point Center Financial versus First American Title Insurance Company.
Yeah, it's $41 million, I believe. We're suing them for fraud because there were liens on a property that we made a construction loan. They didn't disclose them to us and issued title insurance, and we became subject to those liens.
Okay.
So it's active, ongoing litigation.
Okay, let's go back up to the Preserve again. I didn't get the dollar amount of the suit again. It was 36 million, was it?
I think it was 36.
36, okay. So 36 and then 41, and then we have,
That's not 41, that's like, on the First American.
First American.
First American's in the range of, say, $8 to $10 million.
Okay.
It's a title insurance
Okay.
policy.
okay. Okay, so we have 36 and 8 to 10. Then we have Point Center Financial versus Cash.
Yes, $500,000.
What is that? What is the
Breach of contract and harassment.
And who is, what is Cash? Is that a name of someone?
Well, it's one of his names. He goes by many names.
Okay.
What a bunch of these lawsuits are here, Frank, are where they foreclose on the property, these people have fractional interest, but then certain of the people who are involved in litigation won't convey their little fractional interest into the LLC, and then it thwarts them from consummating favorable sales.
Okay.
That's most of those lawsuits. I think Cash is one of those as well.
Okay, I just have like one or two others. The PCF versus TD Service Company?
Yes, $36 million.
36.
They trustee service company sold a large asset in a foreclosure sale to Point Center as acting servicer for a bunch of designated beneficiaries, and so we thought we had control of it. They resold it to a different party at 3:30 in the afternoon, and they tried to cancel foreclosure. The other party then sued everybody, and we spent
What happened
2
was-
years straightening that out and got the property back through a Supreme Court decision in Arizona.
What happened was the foreclosure company screwed up at the foreclosure sale, and it was like a $15 to $20 million loan, and they let them, they bid $1 million, and somebody came in and bid $1 million. They said, fine, we'll take it for $1 million, when that wasn't what the proper bid was supposed to be.
And then there are tenants in common lawsuits where the debtor is a plaintiff in numerous of these. Is that true?
Yes, mostly people related to Lloyd Charton are refusing to sign documents that allow us to...
That's just not
All
true.
right, shh, please, 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 please. Mr. Harkey, please finish your answer.
Okay. In order for us to effectively sell an asset when you have multiple beneficiaries, you have to get signatures off of those parties. And in certain cases, they've refused and asked for special treatment, like much more than their respective amounts. As a result of that, we've had to sue multiple parties to compel them to sign documents to get these transactions closed.
Okay, so you're basically seeking some kind of performance as opposed to money?
But the performance, and I'm handling some of those cases, the
Yes.
performance would result in the closing of an escrow and the distribution of money to the investors. And they're being hung up because of these people not agreeing to close.
Okay, can you just, Mr. Harkey, is there a dollar amount that, assuming everything was in perfect world worked out fine, where you got these people to sign these documents and were able to close, do you have any idea what kind of money you would get from that? Roughly?
Most of what Point Center would get are covered in the servicing fees.
Okay, so it'd be
on these
fees.
schedules.
It would be fees.
It'd be fees. And
Okay.
we're being held up, essentially extorted, in most cases, extorted
Okay.
for preferential treatment.
Understood. Finally, I just have a few more, then we'll be able to move on here. In the Statement of Financial Affairs number 18, which is kind of towards the back of your petition, number 18, and that would be pages,
123.
let's see here.
123.
No, 123?
Statement of financial affairs are on page 109.
Oh, yeah, and then the specific one is 123. Yeah, okay, 123, here we go. Nature, location, and name of business. Indicates some closed LLCs, ending dates from 2007 through December 31, 2012. My question, does the debtor have any tax benefit or net operating loss carry forwards, for example, associated with these entities?
No.
No. Okay. When would that be your answer to?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, not that I
That would be
distrust you, but,
I don't prepare the tax returns, so
Okay.
I don't know about net or operating
Okay,
loss carry
okay.
forward, but I understand your question. I
Okay.
believe the answer is
and I
no.
didn't doubt Mr. Harkey at all. I just,
Yeah,
figured you were the numbers person.
but I'm not real sure because I just graduated high school. I'm not really smart enough to know that, yeah. I've only been doing it for 25 years.
Okay.
You know.
All righty,
That
let's
by
see.
radius on the face of the earth.
And Mr. Harkey, are there any promissory notes evidencing loans that you may have made from the debtor to the debtor? Did you borrow money from the debtor at all?
No, we have a line of credit from Pacific Mercantile Bank, and there are relevant documents that Point Center used to use as a funding line of credit and for commercial paper, and it was a revolver.
What I
So I
get-
have documents relating to that,
Well,
but there's nothing else.
What I was just concerned about was whether you or any member of your family had ever borrowed money from Point Center Financial.
That wasn't paid back, you mean, in other words, outstanding debts?
Well, did you ever do it, or members of your family? Ever borrow money?
No.
Yes, so why would you,
Financial.
why would you ever say that wasn't paid back then? Because I got the impression that maybe you did, but you paid it back.
No.
So you've never borrowed money, you or your family, your wife, your children,
Point Center Financial, no.
never borrowed money from Point Center Financial?
No.
Okay. But I hate to go back to this, but you said, you mean it hasn't been paid back, which made me think, oh, well, you borrowed in the past, but you've paid it back.
Absolutely unequivocally, no.
Why did you say that?
Well, when I'm sitting here, sir, for an hour and being ruled, I mean, I might say something a little strange. It doesn't mean that there's any suspect,
Okay, I was just
you
curious.
know.
He's owed money. I mean, you got
Yeah,
confused.
you know.
How much are you owed, Dan, right now?
You know, I've had to put money into the company
Okay.
to pay payroll and things
Okay,
like
understood.
that. because the company had no money to pay payroll.
Understand.
So, when you're asking these questions, there's never been an instance ever that I borrowed money from
Okay,
Point
let me-
Center
let me-
that I have loaned money to.
Let me just,
So,
not to
when-
belabor the point, but, and it's just, and I don't mean, I'm not harassing you, I'm not trying to be nasty. Is there, do you understand, and I don't want you to be confused by saying, well, I did borrow money like 5 years ago, but then I had to put money into the company like last year, and therefore in my mind it's a wash, so I really don't owe them any money. Now, are we in that kind of territory?
No.
Okay.
Again, I started Point Center in 1979,
Understand.
and the idea that it contrary to what some of these people out here would like to see, we were in the business to make a profit.
Understand.
And when I made a profit, why would I borrow money?
I just asked a question.
Yeah,
That's all.
I didn't borrow money.
Okay. I may have asked this before, but I'll just make sure that I covered it. I know that we've asked you if Point Center Financial ever transferred or gave any money to NFL, National Financial Lending, and the answer was no, correct?
Did Point Center ever transfer or?
Did Point Center
I can't envision why
Financial?
Point Center would give money to NFL other than the original $25,000 that we put in there to start the entity.
Okay, so the answer then, if I were to ask you the question, has Point Center Financial, the debtor, ever transfer any money, assets, anything of any value to NFL? What would the answer be?
No,
Okay, how about any affiliates of NFL?
no.
Okay. Mr. Go, I don't know if Ms. Sorensen requested this, but there's a note here that we were interested in seeing 18 months prior to the filing of bankruptcy Point Center Financial bank statements. Has she ever asked you for those?
No, but
Could we get those?
Gwen's right here, Gwen. 18 months of bank statements.
Yeah,
Oh, we could get those?
yeah.
Thank you, Gwen. And then let's see here. And I think the answer to this is going to be no, but I'm going to ask it anyway, and this will be my last question. And this can be directed to either Mr. Harkey or Gwen. Is there any evidence of any transfers by Point Center Financial to NFL that you are aware of, either one of you?
When you say NFL, do you mean LLC?
I mean, National Financial Lending LLC.
Transfers to NFL LLC
From-
from Point Center?
Yes.
No.
Okay, now, was there another NFL entity? You mentioned, you mean the LLC. Is there something else?
There's a corporation, NFL Incorporated,
There is.
yes.
Okay. And did we ask about that? Is that anywhere in the schedules?
No.
Excuse me, are you aware of that?
Asked about that?
Oh, you did ask about that? I must have been
Well, I
out.
didn't ask the question, have there been any transfers from Point Center Financial to NFL Inc.?
Okay, has there been any transfers?
NFL Inc. was used for a period of time as a bill-paying service
Okay.
for Point Center Financial when Point Center Financial was unable to utilize its own bank account because of levies related to the Brewer judgment. So
Oh.
monies that were transferred to NFL Inc. by Point Center were used in turn to pay bills that were expenses of Point Center Financial and were booked
Oh,
in that manner.
okay, so NFL
It was
Inc.
used
was
as
a
a checking
conduit,
account.
was a
Yeah, it was
conduit
used as a checking account.
to avoid liens.
Well, not so much that, but if you write checks on a checking account,
I
and then a
understand.
levy hits, and the funds are frozen, the checks bounce all over town, so
Okay.
you
Yeah,
need a
but
check
it's-
bill paying service.
It's clear on these avoiding liens, these these folks down there, Brewer,
Listen, I was just,
Yeah, no, but
I was just,
Okay.
you've
understand
answered.
the-
Listen, I understand.
Okay.
Okay, any evidence of transfers by Point Center Financial to Calcom or any other entity within the past 18 months?
no,
Any transfers from Point Center Financial to Dan Harkey?
I don't believe so.
Okay, now there you qualified it. What made you qualify that with "I don't believe so"?
Because Mr. Harkey, when these levies were happening with the Brewer judgment, for example, checks were being mailed out to pay expenses for Point Center's bills, electricity, things of general operating business nature. And when the levies started to hit, our bank, Pacific Mercantile Bank, is a secured creditor in this case. And they would freeze the funds, and they would hold them, and then at some point in time, they would apply them to the debt that Point Center has. So checks would come in, and those checks would be returned non-sufficient funds. And in some cases, Mr. Harkey would transfer his own personal money to Point Center to cover those checks, and then Point Center would reimburse him. And so there was some activity like that that was relatively minimal, and that would have been the purpose for a transfer to Mr. Harkey.
Okay, let me just back here. I thought I asked Mr. Harkey if he ever received any transfers from PSF, and I went through that little scenario about if you like loan money and you borrowed money. Let me just finish. I didn't want Mr. Harkey to think that what I was conveying is, oh, Mr. Harkey, if you receive money from PSF, but it was in consideration for things you have loaned before, I didn't want, I'd like to know that.
Okay,
So-
well, I think the reason Mr. Harkey answered the way he did is because you asked him if he borrowed money from Point Center, and that is absolutely not
Okay,
true.
well, then let me go-
And then, let me just finish.
Okay.
And the transfers that I'm speaking of were transfers and things that were done by me, and he doesn't have personal knowledge of it sitting here today. I keep control of the books and records for Point Center Financial. He doesn't have, he didn't actually make those transfers back and forth himself. I did that.
Okay, Mr. Harkey, were you aware that you were getting reimbursed for expenses from Point Center Financial for money you loaned?
probably not. I mean, I just don't recall, sir. These judgment people down there leaned all of our trust accounts, leaned our NFL accounts, leaned all of these limited liability accounts. They leaned everything. And the whole reason we're in bankruptcy is because within 3 days, they were going to take every single dollar of third-party money out of here. So we had a big, explosion of what went on. You understand that NFL money, Mortgage Fund 1 money, did not belong to us, and they leaned it, and we're going to take that. So if we had a flurry of that I had to put some dollars in, I may not even have it at the time. When handles my personal checking account.
Could we take like a 5-minute break?
I've got one more question. We're going to take a break. Okay, let me just finish up with this last question. And is there any evidence, either Mr. Harkey or Gwen, of any transfers by Point Center Financial to any other affiliate of Point Center Financial? We've talked about transfers to Mr. Harkey. We've talked about the transfers to PCF, to NFL Inc., to Calcom. How about any other affiliate that I haven't talked about that might be affiliated with PCF?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay. Then I am done. We are going to take a 5-minute break, and then I'm going to open it up to, first of all, Mr. Lally, anything else you want to add?
No.
I do have some further
Okay, well-
questions, however, I have to leave at 4.
Okay, we'll reserve. Okay, so we're going to take a 5-minute break.
If we could reserve and continue, that would be terrific.
We're off the record.
Thank you.
We're going to reserve and continue with the trophies you got.
Okay, this meeting is going to come to order again. We're back on the record. It is now 4:10 on May 2nd, 2013. All the questions that I needed to answer have been asked. The creditors' attorneys have asked questions. And at this point, we're going to open it up to the creditors. Now, keep in mind, we've been here 3 hours. I'm going to conclude this at the end of this meeting. We're not going to be coming back here again. So we provided a lot of leeway and flexibility to let questions, and they've been very cooperative. Mr. Harkey and Gwen and Mr. Bernice and Mr. Go have been very, very nice. I know there's been a little, contention once in a while, but other than that, it's gone along fine. So when you ask a question, you have to understand the scope. You can't ask things that are not relevant. Things that, you can't ask about Mr. Harkey's personal financial situation. In fact, we've actually addressed a lot of this stuff, and we've actually asked a lot of questions that Mr. Harkey was kind enough to respond to, and his attorneys were nice enough to allow to be answered, even though, technically speaking, they probably shouldn't have been asked. So what we're going to try to do is, can I get a show of hands of how many people want to ask questions? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Who are the attorneys here? Sir, you come up first. We're going to be professional courtesy. I may need a favor from him sometime. And so what we're going to do is, I'd like to try to get out of here by 5 o'clock, if I could. But so we're going to try to limit it to about 5 or 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes. But let's don't per person. But let's remember the scope is the assets and liabilities of the debtor, and let's try to keep it to that. Okay? So, and then you'll come up and you'll sit down here. You'll identify yourself for the record, and then you'll ask your questions. Okay? So let's proceed.
Richard Davis on behalf of the Brewer Judgment Creditors, Brewer Company San Diego, Brewer Company Dynalectric, and Division 8. Just a couple questions. I'm not going to go too long into this. First, with regard to the cross-collateralized loans with Pacific Mercantile Bank, I think there are 2 loans, about two $5 million loans.
3 loans.
3 loans? Were those lines of credits or were those loans?
There were lines of credit.
They were lines of credits.
They
Okay.
were operational lines of credit for Point Center Financial.
And then equipment loans, the third one.
Yeah, 2 operational lines of credit for $5 million and an equipment loan for like $1.5 million.
And the lines of credits were fully used?
Yes.
And can you tell me the collateral or the security that was given, all the security that was given to Pacific Mercantile to secure those loans?
I'm going to let him answer the question. It's really a legal question. The documents speak for themselves, but I'm going to let him answer the question.
Originally, Point Center guaranteed all these loans, and I think they put additional collateral on most of my real property.
Just kind of like a blanket lien on your real property, or their specific assets?
Yes, some of my real property, yes.
And then the assets of the debtor, do you know what specific assets, or are you just saying it was a...
It's a blanket lien on Point Center Financial.
Okay, and your personal assets as well?
Yes.
With regard to the attorney fees that are being paid on behalf of the debtor, the attorney's fees, are there third-party entities paying those fees?
Which attorney are you talking about? Talking about on the Brewer Wexler on the Brewer judgment?
I'd be talking about on the with regard to probably your fees, with regard to the debtor's attorney's fees. So that would be your fees, and I believe you're representing the debtor with regard to the litigation as well.
Correct.
And I would say Mr. Wexler as well. Are there third-party entities that are paying those fees?
We have trade servicing fees that, as they come in, it's little buckets of cash flow, if you will. Sometimes we get buckets of cash flow, and sometimes we don't. And yes, we use those to pay our lawyers.
So the debtor is paying the debtor's attorney's fees, not third-party entities. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's a question to Gwen.
Well, let's just put it this way. So far, as of the date as it relates to this particular case, there hasn't been any payments. I don't think there's been any attorney's fees paid to anyone out of Point Center since the filing of the case. Is that correct, Gwen?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Are there fees that are intended to be paid?
We'll see.
If those fees are paid, is it going to be paid by third-party entities, or those are going to be paid by, and where I'm going is, are these third-party entities going to be filing claims against the debtor?
I don't have.
Ms. Melanson, do you know, are there going to be third-party entities that are going to be paying the attorney's fees for the debtor?
As I sit here today, I have no idea whether there'll be claims about that. With regards to different cases, fees get paid from different sources. Relating to the debtor's bankruptcy, those fees will be paid by Point Center.
So with regard to fees, like the litigation, those fees may be paid by a third-party entity?
They are
They are paid by, and do you know who's paying those fees?
National Financial Lending LLC.
NFL LLC.
Yes.
And is NFL LLC generating any new business?
NFL LLC is not investing in new loans. It is managing its assets and working through problems with its current portfolio.
With its current portfolio, okay. These next couple of questions, and I just have a couple of more questions. They may have already been answered, and if they are, just if you can just repeat the answer. Sorry for it being repetitive. But for the year 2013, so for this year, how much money has NFL LLC paid to the debtor in accrued management fees?
I don't know. I have to look at the records.
Have there been some fees that have been paid?
Yes.
Do you have an estimate of what those fees are?
No.
How about any member distributions?
No, not this year.
I'm going to go for 2012, 2011, and 2010.
I can't respond to questions about detail, about prior year financials of National Financial Lending or Point Center. I don't recall off the top of my head.
Is there a list someplace?
The books and records reflect that.
I think we've supplied around 50,000 pages to your clients.
There's a few pages there.
Yeah. And some provided by other than us.
Is debtor, and I believe you answered this, or at least for the last 5 years, I don't think there's been any new business generated by the business or by the debtor. But is the debtor currently offering any investment opportunities?
No, you mean new?
New.
No.
It's just servicing its portfolio at this point in time.
Yes.
And any fees that it's receiving come from the current portfolio that it has.
Yes.
Do you remember, I believe you answered this, so I think it was more than 5 years ago. Do you remember the last offering, the last opportunity that was offered by?
Yes, 3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years ago. Last question, it's I think a simple question, but do you know why my clients, the Brewer Judgment Creditors, were not listed as secured debtors, although at the time you filed they have their judgment liens?
Creditors, you mean? Secured creditors?
Secured creditors, correct.
I don't recall why. I mean, my idea with the value of the collateral or whatever. I know they ended up on the list of 20 largest unsecured creditors, so.
Okay.
We know they have a judgment. We know when it was recorded, so.
And that's all I have.
Sir, can I get your name again?
Richard Davis.
Richard Davis. Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis. Anybody else? Next, go ahead.
Thank you.
And make your appearance for the record.
Yeah, Lloyd Charton,
And spell your name, sir.
C-H-A-R-T-O-N.
C-H-A-R-T-O-N.
T-O-N.
Okay, Mr. Charlton, go ahead.
Mr. Harkey, on the subject of the Wexler fees, on the Mi Arbolito loan, that's the same as 6th and Upas, isn't it?
Yes, but I would like to disclose my relationship with you. you're my neighbor. You have been an investor with Point Center Financial, and you approached me in 2007 and asked for preferential redemption on your investments.
I know that's your position, and that's the mantra
That's
you've been
fine.
speaking because you got sued and you're unhappy about it, but I'm just asking about...
No, I'm not unhappy. I want to disclose our background so that
Well, who are you
everybody
disclosing it
understands
to?
The
You know,
court.
that's what I think...
And by the way, for the record, Mr. Cadigan, that's Mr. Lowley's client, so I
You
don't
already
think...
asked the
Yeah,
question.
All right.
exactly.
How many questions do you have asked?
Here's the thing. Listen. Mr. Charton, you've got about 7 minutes. Just please direct it to the assets and liabilities. Try not to do what Mr. Lowley did if he's asked a question.
I understand. My
May I
question is,
disclose
as
my
to
background?
the...
It's okay.
Slow down, slow down.
Why don't we go ahead and ask? Because let's
Okay.
go. Go ahead and ask the question.
On the matter of Mi Arbolito in San Diego, there was a lawyer you hired named Wexler, and there were legal fees incurred, right?
Yes.
And on that matter, the National Financial Lending Pool owned 22% of Mi Arbolito, correct?
I don't recall.
All right. So assuming just for the moment that it was some percentage around there, isn't it true that you had the National Financial Lending Pool, even though it only owned that 22%, pay 100% of the legal fees?
Don't even answer the question. That's not a Point Center issue. This is
It-
exactly what Mr. Cadigan
No.
instructed.
Point Center's the manager and caused this to occur.
All right, why don't you state your question again, and then let me hear
Point
it.
Center Financial is the manager of the National Financial Lending Pool, which has shareholders, correct?
Don't answer that.
Point Center Financial has one shareholder, Mr.
That's all we're talking
Harkey.
about.
Point Center Financial manages the National Financial
Yeah.
Lending Pool and
All right.
causes the National Financial
So
Lending
what's the
Pool to...
what's the
The
question?
question is, did you have the National Financial Lending Pool pay 100% of the legal fees?
You
in an
meaning
asset-
Mr. Harkey or the debtor?
This-
Did
Did the debtor?
Mr. Harkey cause the debtor? Mr. Harkey manages the debtor.
Okay, so
controls
your
the
question
debtor.
is, did the debtor?
Did the debtor use National Financial Lending Pool money to pay legal fees, 100% of the legal fees, on an asset it only owned 22% of?
I don't
If-
recall. I'd have to look at that. I think you probably have all those records, Mr. Charton.
The management, Point Center serves as the manager to a number of assets that still exist, that haven't been disposed of, and is collecting about 2.5%, accruing about 2.5% per year, correct?
Yes.
And are there not some assets that you've not reevaluated that you feel may in fact be worth less than the 2.5% per year?
The idea of spending large amounts of money and possibly the millions to get MAI appraisals is just not in the cards right now.
Well, can't you, if you're worried that you might be accruing management fees that exceed the value of the property, couldn't you just simply call brokers and get a broker of opinion letter, which would cost very little, if not nothing, based on the fact that you have brokers that would want to supply that information to curry favor with you?
What does this have to do with Point Center?
It has to do with Point Center's income.
Well, I suppose, Mr. Charlton, you're driving at the fact that he's churning fees, right? That's what you're getting to, the point that he's really doing.
Yes,
He's
that is exactly what
He's
I'm
actually driving at a point that Point Center is getting too much money, which I guess would be a good thing
That's the
for
point
Point
he's
Center.
trying to
Point
make.
Center Financial was getting
But
too
here's-
much money, which would be a good thing.
But Mr. Cadigan, here's what's really
But what
important.
happens is Point Center Financial, although it's the debtor, is the manager of everybody's
So
assets.
if you could just in a real, if you could just explain to me what is your question? What are you trying to elicit from in terms of
Why
response?
aren't you reevaluating the property so you can find out if it's a sensible plan to accrue all these large management fees on property that may be sold for very little and leave the investors with nothing? That's my question.
Okay, well, that's your question, and you're asking for his opinion. and a management decision. You're basically asking him to give his management opinion. Do you want to give your management opinion?
At this point, I focus pretty much 7 days a week on my litigation with Mr. Charton and have very little time to focus on the business of solving the problems and redeeming as much capital as possible.
Well, but there's another issue here as well, and I think this is important, Mr. Caddy. I want to make, again, this is Jeff Benese. Mr. Charton knows this full well, and these investors do as well. What happened is in 2007, there was a massive recession, and the borrowers who borrowed money from Point Center or NFL or any other program stopped paying. Not because they were deadbeats. They were all highly experienced developers, and they stopped paying because of the recession that damaged their business. And that also caused massive depression on these real estate values. Now, this is the important point as to what is Point Center's ultimate worth. Many of these assets are coming back in value dramatically, and I'm surprised Mr. Charton doesn't know that. And there are potential joint venture opportunities with major developers because these are large undeveloped tracts of land that are now ready to be subdivided again. So companies like Lennar Homes, who have no lots today to build houses on, can in fact buy blue top lots from Point Center or our joint venture partners at values at market today and not what they were 3 years ago. That's what the general plan is, and that's what Mr. Harkey's plan is.
Well, let me just follow up on something. And I know you've been here a long time, and you might have, didn't mean to say this, but you said you were spending most of your time defending litigation,
For this gentleman right
which
here.
concerns me about who's running the company, sir.
Well, I am. On
Okay.
Saturdays and Sundays, sir, I'm in the company. At nights, I'm in the company. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm here at 6 and 7.
I think what he's referring to is we've been in a trial
Yeah.
across the street.
And I take,
No, just
and I
just-
take
let-
large
let-
compensation.
This is
let-
Jeff Benese, and just Mr. Caddy, just so you know, we've been in a trial that started on March 25th.
Okay.
And so that's what he's referring to.
So he's in trial over in Santa Ana.
Correct.
Which means that he has to be there and that he has to do his, kind of like us lawyers, when we're in court, we have to work at night and on weekends to do our job, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so that's what.
That's all.
All right, thank you. Thanks for clearing that up.
You've had, many of these properties were foreclosed on in 2007, 2008, 2009. In all these years, have you gone back to these large assets and gotten new evaluations so that you can adjust the book value and let the investors know what their property's really worth? Have you done that in all these years?
Not
You haven't been in
economically
trial all
feasible.
these years, that's for sure.
Mr. Charton, you are a member of a few of these. You refuse to give capital calls. You refuse to pay your
Just answer the
management
question.
fees or
Don't-
service
yeah,
fees.
you know what, I'm not here, I'm not, I didn't declare
I think
bankruptcy.
the answer is no, he hasn't, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Well, that's true,
Thank you.
and it would have been.
All right, so.
And so we're clear.
My last question.
But I want to complete
I
this
get-
answer.
No,
Well, I'm
I don't
going
want,
to.
I don't
Hold
want
on
you
a
to.
second.
An MAI appraisal on one of these projects can be upwards of $20,000 or $30,000.
I don't want an MAI appraisal, just a broker of opinion letter. They're
That's
virtually free.
worthless.
It is not worthless.
We're talking over the.
You don't. You get a broker opinion letter on somebody's house down the street here, not on a 500-acre parcel of real estate in Beaumont or a
Of course you
parcel in
can.
India. No, you can't.
Mr. Harkey, isn't it true that you borrowed money from the NFL to buy the building you're in on Argonaut? You borrowed $4 million and you didn't disclose it to the investors. And although you paid it back right away, you borrowed that money
Don't answer
in order
that,
to
Dan.
buy the building
That's a
you're in.
litigation issue. This has nothing to do with
No,
Point Center.
it's along the lines of
But
the
let's make
questions
certain
you
that there's
asked,
very
isn't
clear,
it?
anybody who's here is an
Has to do with
FL should
management.
very carefully read their operating circular, in which Point Center was the manager, and any kind of loan that Point Center was involved in did not have to be disclosed to anybody because you're shareholders.
It's called
And the particular
self-dealing.
loan-
It's called
Well,
self-dealing.
first of all, the loan was $3.8 million, and it was
I'm
in
sorry, I rounded it off to $4 million.
2002, and it was paid back, wasn't it, sir?
Yes.
You don't
And by the way,
self-deal with a trust fund.
I've had to sue.
Not a
this-
It's not a trust
That's not a
fund.
trust fund.
I've had to
And that's
sue
what
this,
you're.
I've had to sue this gentleman twice for neighbor.
Back on the record. Okay, we just took a brief timeout on the record. Now, Mr. Marshak, you have come in. Nice to have you here. If you'd like to sit up at the table, you're welcome to, sir.
I'll come around.
Make your appearance on the record, sir.
Here, you may take this.
No, ma'am, you're going to sit there.
I don't know who he is, so.
No, he's the attorney for the Creditors Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Cadigan. Richard Marshak, Marshak Case Counsel for the Official Committee of Unsecured Creditors. We are here through Chris Thagard of my office. She's the one that's worked extensively on this case, and she knows all the paperwork in this case. Unfortunately, she had a flight, and she had to leave at 4 o'clock. So, and we had understood that this was going to be over at 3, so that's why she handled it, because she's the day in and day out attorney on the case.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Marshak. Go ahead, Ms. Kelsey.
I'm just an investor, and I have two almost more questions for you.
Okay.
Frank
Cadigan. Call me Frank.
Thank you. I made investments through Point Center Financial back in 2004, 2005, in that period of time, in 2 different instruments, investment instruments. And one of them is the mortgage note pools, which is the one that is listed as the assets that are being challenged. My question on that is, what they have in here is the book value of my investments today. However, the trust deed collateral fund certificates show not only what the primary net value was, but also that a certain interest would be paid on a regular basis. And there have been years now when none of that money has been paid back. Those stopped around September 2007. So my question is, why can't I claim the interest that was due as well in terms of what my value and stake in the organization is, or whatever the distributed assets are going to be? I just think that is money that is due me, because that was part of the pledge that was made by Point Center Financial.
Let me help you, Frank. Can I answer the question? This is for everybody. Regardless of what was put in the bankruptcy schedules, you're free to file a proof of claim for any amount you think is owed. So file, if you think you're entitled to interest or things which you may very well be, please just file your proof of claim, and whatever your proof of claim files, until somebody objects to it, that overrides what's in the bankruptcy schedule. So just because we put that number down, that doesn't mean that's what you're owed for sure. You file your claim, and unless there's a basis to object, your claim will stand. So everybody should file their proofs of claim, as soon as possible, and you can include in whatever you'd like.
All right.
Did I answer your question?
You sure did. Now, the second part.
Okay.
It was a part
Don't
A,
go
part
away,
B.
Rob.
I did make an investment in, I'm going to call it the mortgage pool. Anyway, I think that's where I put the money, and then they was asked to transfer it over into National Financial Lending Company. That's where the money ended up being processed. And I didn't bring that paperwork with me. But that is my second question. This only related to the first investment instrument. There's nothing in the file regarding the other instrument, which is now called National Financial Lending. Why is that not included in
Well,
this
let's see now.
process?
Do you have an investment in an entity called National Financial Lending that's
Yes.
not in bankruptcy, right?
Correct.
That's
I guess so.
Probably, it's not.
Okay.
And this is only Point Center Financial, so if you have an investment in another entity that isn't in bankruptcy, I don't have any jurisdiction over that, so I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, the only reason why it actually came up was because you were asking about money that was going from Point Center.
Right, and the
into that.
answer was none, that there were no transfers, according to the testimony Mr. Harkey gave.
I can address that issue.
Okay, go ahead, Mr.
With regard to those that have invested in the national, in the NFL, this is important. The debtor takes the position that the debtor is not responsible to repay that loan.
It's not a loan.
repay that investment, correct. The debtor takes that position. Certain investors, certain active investors who, and certain members of the Creditors Committee take the position, and the Creditors Committee has not adopted a position yet. We're still gathering information. Certain investors take the position that the NFL, although not contractually the debtor, although not contractually obligated to repay the loan, the debtor did make, and this is their position, did make misrepresentations and did mismanage the funds and did breach their fiduciary duty, and that, according to certain members of the Creditors Committee, that since Point Center Financial had an obligation to fulfill certain duties and had an obligation not to make misrepresentations, that because of alleged misrepresentations and because of alleged mismanagement, Point Center Financial is liable for all the debt that was, all the investments into NFL. So, and this is something Mr. Go and I are going to be working on together. The Creditors Committee believes that all members, all investors in the NFL should receive notice of this bankruptcy, and all members of the NFL should have an opportunity to file proof of claim. If they file a proof of claim, it is deemed allowed until the debtor or party in interest objects, as Mr. Go stated a few minutes ago. Now, will the debtor object, or will the Creditors Committee object? We don't know yet. We don't know. The objection would look like this. The debtor is not contractually obligated to reimburse the investment. And so they would contend that they're not responsible for the loss. Others, and I believe like Mr. Chard would be in this category, would argue they are responsible for the loss. And a bankruptcy judge is going to have to determine whether or not investors in the NFL are creditors of Point Center Financial. But Point Center Financial at this point says they're not. Am I correct, Mr. Go? In saying
no comment.
Okay.
We don't believe that they're creditors.
Right. That's why am I correct in that last statement?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And the Creditors Committee is still trying to formulate a position as to what is in the best interest of the state. Just a preview of bankruptcy, though, I think what may come to, bankruptcy usually goes one of two ways. It usually becomes a war and we litigate everything through the bankruptcy court, or it becomes a vehicle where everyone comes to terms and there's a consensual process. It may come to pass where the Creditors Committee negotiates a deal with Point Center Financial where they say, okay, we will pay, just pulling numbers out of there, 60% of anybody who had an NFL claim, and we'll pay 100% or 80% of anybody who has a mortgage note program claim. We may break these into categories and say, if these people don't want to litigate the issue and they don't want to litigate the issue, Point Center may concede that they pay 50 cents on the dollar to avoid litigation, whereas creditors who have absolutely undisputed claims against Point Center Financial, they may pay a higher percentage to. This is part of the process that the Creditors Committee will be engaging with the debtor.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank
Marshall.
you.
Miss, are you finished, ma'am?
That's my.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming up. And now, who would like to come?
Short.
You did a great job. Any other? Yeah, come on up, sir. Just give us your name when you get up here so we can...
My name is Robert Bolster.
And how do you spell your last name, sir?
B-O-L-S-T-E-R.
Okay.
And I've been in three programs with Point Center. One was the Valpico property, another Georgetown, and one that I refer to as the commercial paper program. And when early in the day you outlined the 4 programs, I didn't hear commercial paper program mentioned.
Mortgage note and commercial paper are the same.
Okay, they're the
The
same.
difference is commercial paper was up to 270 days.
Okay,
And if it was one day after that, it was mortgage note.
Okay.
Same offering.
Okay, and my other questions, and I'll be brief, I understand the time, all relate to the 2.5% management fees. Just a comment, I think 5 years ago, be 2008, or maybe 4 years, 2009. Cash call was sent out on, I believe, Georgetown, in the neighborhood, for my percentage, of $1,100. And I spoke to Mr. Esparza, who you referred to earlier in the day, and he gave me a breakdown. $154 was taxes, and the balance, which would be, what, $946, I guess, was management fees. And he couldn't tell me what the management fees were for. Just the answer to management fees is management fees. I visited both other properties that I owned, the Valpico, which has since been sold, and Georgetown just a year ago. And for the life of me, just looking at them, I can't see how any money was spent on those. So my question is, what do you do with the management fees? Is it upkeep? Do you mow the lawn? Do you sweep? You had the for sale, but so you're not the listing broker. I could not see how any money is spent on managing those properties. No, that's a question.
Look at me.
I'm looking at you.
If you're in one of the programs, like your fractional note, you get reports. When they sell, you get reports. You get reports. If you're in a dedicated LLC that owns one of these properties, you get reports, and you get an annual K-1 and tax reporting. You get all this information.
Is that your answer?
Yes.
My question again is, what kind of management is going on? Can you answer the question of management fees with something other than the word management?
Is this a question about the servicing fees under the agreement?
No, the servicing fees.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're contractually obligated. I'm Jeff Benisi.
Yeah.
And they're in your agreements. I don't know what you're in, sir.
I'm going to object. I've been here 5 minutes, and Mr. Benise is answering more questions than Mr. Harkey.
Well, that's because I happen to know the information.
And that's not good. Mr. Harkey does not know answers to these questions.
What's actually good is that the documents are precision drafted, so if you read them, they'll answer your question.
That's not true. Documents say that the documents may say that Point Center is entitled to management fees. This gentleman is asking, what specifically are management fees?
It doesn't say management fees. If it's
Or
NFL, it
service
says
fees.
servicing fees.
Excuse me for the...
And it says reserve accounts, and then it says all other expenses are covered by NFL. But I understand your question, and Mr. Harkey should answer. You're asking him specifically about a taking care of the property post-foreclosure. He should answer that. That's the question, right?
Yeah.
If there was a foreclosure on a large tract of land, what do you do?
Well, we basically come to work every day, and when there's bankruptcies from borrowers, we handle that. When there's maintenance on the property, we handle that. When there's insurance needs, we handle that. When there's investors like you, sir, that called me and called a couple people in the last month, and I returned your call twice.
Yes, you did.
We handle that. We have a staff of about 20, a very small staff, and we come in and we handle what we need to do on a daily basis. And the fees that come in, the servicing fees, pay the salaries, pay the rent, pay the insurances. Dan Harkey does not take a salary. Dan Harkey hasn't taken a salary in 5.5 years. Dan Harkey comes in every day and works to solve all these problems.
And there are cash call issues.
Yes,
Paying taxes, for example, on the properties. Explain that.
Yeah, and in your case, if you send in money on a cash call for a particular property, that money then comes back to you in the form of a cash call before the people that didn't send in their cash call money. So that's an accounting.
Well, finish, but then I have an answer.
You know, Gwen handles all of the accounting needs. She handles monthly accounting, handles a quarterly compiled audit to go to the real estate Department of Real Estate, handles every one of these as an operating entity. Every single one of these has a set of books and records. Every single one of these, all the investors are communicated with. There's 3,000 investors, roughly, that need to be communicated with. This little tiny staff of 20 does that. Reporting, letters that go out to them, financials that go out to them, cash calls, declines, frustrated people, litigation.
Well, I spoke to what I thought was disproportionate on that particular cash call, and I actually answered it. I sent $154 in against $1,100, and it's just my contention that the difference, which quote, or the servicing fees, are way out of proportion to what the taxes would be. And you keep saying that the cash call, or intimate that the cash call is primarily for property taxes. That's
Excuse
small
me, can I just say something?
fraction. Of course
Can I
you
say
can.
something? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Mr. Bolster?
I am.
Okay, so I think you said you were in
Georgetown?
Georgetown?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was involved with Mr. Esparza and his team in creating the letter that went out regarding the cash call.
Mm-hmm.
And do you recall that there was a spreadsheet that had the amounts we were asking for, and then it was broken down by each different owner's lender code, which you would have been one of them, Brett? And do you recall that the columns at the top had a breakdown of what the money that we were asking for was about? You
No,
remember
I
that?
don't, but
It
I'd be glad to look at it.
Okay, I'm going to tell you that it described exactly what you were sending your money in for, sir. I will just tell you that I know that that's true.
Would you furnish that to me?
I would be super happy to do that.
And then I have another question, and it has to do with book value, just for Georgetown's sake. The 12/31/12 book value of $3,327,50. Is that the book value of 22.758%? Just so I understand.
Are you looking at the schedule?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Schedule B.
you said you had a commercial paper interest?
Well, that's
I'm saying.
in addition. No,
Okay, so but you understand the commercial paper program because you were involved in
apparently
it?
not very well, but
Okay.
no, I'm just
I'm
referring to your
answering your
schedule.
question, okay?
Go ahead.
That dollar figure represents the amount of that Georgetown investment that is in the name of Point Center Financial, either under mortgage note or commercial paper. I don't know off the top of my head. I believe it might be mortgage note. But the entire book value of the entire property is not represented there. That's just the portion that Point Center has an ownership interest in under that program. And book value is cost, what we paid for it.
Okay. So if I were to divide the $3,327,50 by .22758,
No, you don't, no, that figure is .2278 of the total.
I understand. Well, it's
You don't
22.56, yeah.
Okay, you don't divide the $3 million figure by that. That $3 million figure is the percentage of the total.
I think we're saying the same thing.
Okay.
In other words, the total is something like 5 times,
Yes,
yeah,
it was, yes.
15 million,
Yes.
give or take. Okay. And then one other question quickly, because I know I've spent more time. Who provided the appraisal for Georgetown?
We wouldn't know that off the top of our
That's a
head.
question.
No, do you know?
We use
Exactly.
third party, what are called MAI. They're members of the Appraisal Institute, and they get a set of credentials that is in advance, like 5, 6, 7 years worth of additional education. And they go out and appraise property. We usually try to find an appraiser that's familiar with the geographic area and a property type. We order it from a list of approved appraisers from the Management Institute, and we then send a request out to order that appraisal, just like we have for 30-some years.
So all you can tell me is just a member of that association, but not specifically who it was.
Well, no, because we don't use the same appraiser for every property. If a property is in Texas, like in Georgetown, you wouldn't use the same property as a property in
Of course you
Newport
wouldn't.
Beach.
Yeah,
That's
can we
not
send him
my...
a copy of the appraisal? That's what he's asking for.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, you were you a fractional note holder in that?
Yeah.
Okay, then you got
I have a copy.
You have it.
You have a copy.
You got a full material disclosure package with
I'm
a
sure
full
I do.
copy of the
Yeah,
appraisal.
it's in your package.
Could I get a copy subsequent?
I can send you another copy. You know what would be great for me is if you sent me an email or called me to remind me that you want me to do that, because I don't.
And what's your email address?
GMELANSON@pointcenter.com. Because I remember you want the cash call spreadsheet and the appraisal.
Point Center spelled out.
POINTCENTER.com.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Who would like to come up next? This gentleman, and then, sir, why don't you... I thought there were others. This gentleman in the glasses, didn't you have something? Okay, well, you'll all get a chance. Just identify your name for the record, sir.
My name is Howard Reese.
Howard.
R-E-E-S-E.
Okay, Mr. Reese.
And I have two topics.
Okay.
Going through the backup, I noticed that an investment that we have in the Palm Springs Country Club isn't listed. And I heard that anything that had been sold was omitted. And I understand the property was sold on about March 6th, somewhere in there. So I'm assuming that's the reason that investment is not covered.
Yeah, in the last 30 to 45 days, a couple of things may have sold, and I believe that was one of them that haven't been reconciled as yet because we
Okay.
were getting through tax season the end of March, and then immediately 2 weeks later, the trial of Lloyd Charlton began. So
Okay.
there's queued up accounting tasks that need to be addressed, and Palm Springs is one of them.
Okay. Any chance the investors are going to benefit at all
No,
from the sale of that
if
property?
you put in money in a cash call, you will get a portion of that back, but I haven't reconciled it yet.
Okay. Then my wife and I, well, no, that one is in the name of my wife and I. And then I have two investments in the mortgage fund as IRAs.
Do you know which fund? Is it National Financial Lending, or is
No.
it Point Center Mortgage Fund 1?
Point Center Mortgage Fund.
Okay.
Okay. And being IRAs, they were administered by Pensco, and they devalued those significantly. Is there going to be any possibility of getting anything through on the IRA investments, and do they have anything that's
I
better
think
protected?
a lot of people with Pensco, quite some time ago in 2011, one of the other clients who has an account with Pensco provided Pensco with the Charlton litigation information.
Correct.
And Pensco's internal policy was to
Right, I
report
understand
your value at 10% of the book value that we report to them.
that. Right.
And the assets of that fund don't have anything to do with the bankruptcy for Point Center Financial. So that fund,
They do not?
no, Point Center is the manager, but that fund has its own assets, has nothing to do with these schedules, and we're trying to sell the assets and distribute available cash as we've been doing since 2007.
Okay, because they were within 2 months of maturing.
Okay, that's not Point Center Mortgage Fund 1 then. You mean the mortgage note program?
Right.
Okay, that's different.
Is that Point Center?
That's Point Center, yes.
Okay,
That's
that's what I
what
thought.
this gentleman was talking
Yeah,
about.
this gentleman is your client.
Okay.
You're-
Your client.
I'm your lawyer.
Yeah.
Meet him
All right.
afterwards.
I guess I'll wait for the process to work on those things.
What's your name, sir?
Howard Reese.
Okay. Not help a member, please.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Who would like to come up next? Sir?
Just have one quick question for Gwen. Derek Rosewarne.
I'm sorry, sir, what is your name?
Derek Rosewarne.
Okay, so let me just get, that's D-E-R-R-I-C, and the last name?
R-O-S-E-W-A-R-N-E.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
And the question is, and this is the first time I've seen this document, and we did address page 16, and it's just, I'm not sure whether it's not to do with the bankruptcy, but it's to do with page 16, which we've addressed, and that's on page 17 actually, and the National Financial Lending, NFL, and I'm not exactly sure what these percentages are, but am I right, Gwen, in assuming that the book value is it's 0.01%, so the book value, total book value is then 100 times that 7.001, the total value of the national of NFL as we are today.
Okay, well, I don't think it's 100. I think it's more than that because I can't do math in my head because it is like 1/10 of 1%.
That's right, it's 1/10.
So I think it's like
so
times. I think it's around 75 million is the book value. You got recently your K1.
yeah.
Okay, your K1 that you recently got had a financial statement with it
right.
for National Financial Lending LLC.
Okay.
Okay, if you have that paperwork, there's a balance sheet that shows the total equity for the company. I think it's around 70-something million. So that figure on the Schedule 16 is Point Center's interest, which is 1/10 of 1%, very small amount of the total.
And now this book value, this is basically on today's massively reduced values from what pre-2007.
It's cost cash basis as of January 1st, 2013, because we do our financials quarterly, and when that was recorded was February 13th. So that corresponding 1/10 of 1% would be, you could do a calculator on the balance sheet that I gave you for 12/31.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And who would like to, sir, why don't you come on up?
Hello. My name is Arthur Wallach. Excuse me, drawing.
Go ahead, sir.
So I was looking around the room here, just to comment first, and I was noticing that most of the people are senior citizens, as I am. And I imagine they worked hard for all of this money, as I did. And my question is this. I've asked you directly, Dan, in person. I've asked you in letters, and I've never gotten a clear answer. And that is, I know you're a very sophisticated real estate investor, and I don't pretend to be as sophisticated as you do. But I do know that investing in first trust deeds as opposed to second trust deeds and raw land is a lot safer. And yet you put the mortgage note money, which you're paying back in time periods, into second trust deeds and raw land. Doesn't make sense to me.
My suggestion is just read your documents. In order for you to effectively ask that question.
No, I'm asking how is it that you planned to pay?
You need to read your documents.
I read the documents.
Well, then bring them in and ask.
I don't need to. You have them.
Huh? I don't.
You have the same documents.
Actually, Mr. Harkey has his retirement, his entire retirement's in NFL.
That doesn't mean anything to me.
No, it absolutely does.
No, it doesn't.
Well, maybe it does. Mr. Harkey believed in NFL, still does.
That's not the question I'm asking.
When? How much do you have in NFL?
No, that's not the question
Well,
I'm
this
asking.
isn't about, ask about Point Center, please, sir.
No, this is Point Center.
Okay.
And what I want to know is why would you invest in second trust deeds and raw land, which are very highly risky? Simple.
Read your documents. Simple.
They were very, very
basic
successful
people. I
for a
wouldn't-
very long time
everyone
until
got-
September of 2007.
No, they weren't. They were empty.
Did you get
And
your
look,
money
I bought-
and your payments before September of 2007?
Look, it's a back there.
I'm answering your question.
Answer that question.
Yeah, did you
I
get
don't
your,
know. I was in the pool. I don't know.
Did you get payments?
Which one? I got payments,
Was
but
things
I don't know.
performing before September of 2007?
But you know what?
timely?
I'm asking a question here. My question is, why do you invest in second trust deeds and raw land, which are much riskier?
But are you talking about Point Center or
Yeah.
something else?
Yeah,
Okay, what program are you talking about?
the mortgage note program.
My only suggestion, sir, is just read your
Oh,
documents.
that's what you told me before.
Well, that's fine. I'm telling you again.
You told me, well, that's why I'm sitting here to ask you this time, and you still can't.
Your question appears to be,
The risk.
no, appears to be What were the benefits of investing in second deeds of trust on behalf of these investors?
Yes, or raw land.
It can't be that hard, Mr. Hardy.
Yeah, it can't be that hard for you. You're
40
the
years in the business, up until the June of '07, things worked wonderfully. I didn't create the economic meltdown.
That has nothing to do with
Warren
the question.
Buffett said that if anybody drank the Kool-Aid, it was 300 million of us.
I mean, the bottom
That's
line.
not the question. The question is, why did you invest in so much risk when you could have done it in less risk?
Well, so, sir,
Wait
you
a
know,
second.
what, I actually use myself as an example early on in this about if I could make sure my investment was in a first trust deed. And Mr. Harkey said, yeah, it would be lower interest rate, but if you wanted more interest return, he was using figures like 2.5 to 5 for lower payments, and then higher for higher risk. And he indicated, as I recall the record, and that would be invested in higher risk like second trustees. So in my mind, if I was a younger guy, which I'm not, and I had a whole future ahead of me and I wanted to take some risk, I probably in my head would have thought, well, maybe I'll go with something with a higher rate of return. But at my age, if I was going to do this today, I'd probably want something like a first trust deed. And
Well,
according to
point.
Mr. Harkey, he said that the documents, that I'd make that decision myself. That's what I understood to be his testimony. Now, I'm kind of thinking maybe if your documents said
I'm
that...
talking specifically about the mortgage note program, which was a fixed interest return for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and 12 months. Why would you invest in a less liquid investment like a second trustee that just carries incredibly more risk?
Fortunately, I don't have to answer that question.
I know, but I'm asking him,
The mortgage note-
as a sophisticated investor.
You made that choice. The documents clearly identified what the mortgage note program was going to invest
He
in.
told me in the beginning it would only be first trustees, and Point Center Financial was guaranteeing it.
Right.
Well, let me
We've
ask
heard that
a
mantra.
follow-up to his question. In order to perform and make the interest payments,
Yes.
was it necessary to obtain new investments and new funds in order to continue making the interest payments to the old note holders?
No.
No.
It didn't require investing in
Was it a Ponzi scheme, Richard?
15%
Yeah,
return trustees.
That's the chart and
Yeah,
Kool-Aid.
Lloyd Charton mantra.
You know, it's funny.
A second trustee that he
there
was
was another
investing in was
investor
paying
in that
15%.
It looks like we're...
Yeah,
For $2.5
exactly.
billion, it came worth $100 million.
This may be something we're just not going to answer today. Sir, do you have anything else you want to? Okay. Anyone else? Sir, come on up. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Waller.
Thank you.
My name is Jeff Gomberg,
How do you spell your last name, sir? How do you spell your last name?
Gomberg.
Okay, go
Good
ahead, sir.
afternoon. I'd like to get back to the Burnett loan for a moment. My understanding was that, my knowledge is that on or around June the 12th of 2012, you signed a purchase and sale agreement for the sale of that property to Somas, perhaps a couple of others, sale price being $1 million. You recall that?
Mr. Gomberg,
Yes or no?
who are you?
I am the son of Edward Gomberg.
Okay, who's deceased?
That's correct.
Do you have any documents to suggest that you're the
Actually, I do.
designated beneficiary?
Actually, I do.
Where are they?
I don't have to bring them here
Your
to this
sister
meeting.
specifically told me that she was. The documents that we received, your sister...
You received documents in October that evidenced her transfer of his entire portfolio under my control. That was then supported by the grant firm who represent me in the matter. And your loan servicing
Same firm
department.
that represents Lloyd Charton,
Yeah, the
correct?
same firm, so you're a Lloyd Chartonite.
exactly.
I didn't realize.
What's your question, sir?
That gets my question, please.
Why don't you go ahead and ask?
By the way, I was not listed as a creditor.
Okay, sir.
I'm an unlisted
All right,
creditor.
well,
So my question to you is, did you sign the PSA or not?
This is not Point Center, that's my only question.
Did NFL have an investment in Burnett Development?
Don't answer it. He's not going to answer any
Not going
questions.
to answer anything.
Nothing to do with
You have nothing to
Isn't
do
it
with
true? Isn't it true that in that PSA and the 3 following amendments, the last of which you signed in January of 2013, that the proceeds from that sale were to be paid to Calcom Capital?
us. I don't know who you are, sir, so that's, I'm not answering anything to you.
Okay. And isn't it true that the title company intercepted after my raising an issue about it with your loan servicing department?
We don't know who you are. I don't acknowledge you.
All right. Your shareholder distributions in the past 3 years, how much have you received in shareholder distributions? Everyone has asked you about salary and bonuses, but what were your shareholder distributions
I'm
in
not
the last 3
answering you,
years?
sir. I don't know who you are.
The appraisals. I think you used a Wackler, MI appraiser. My understanding is that you didn't pay more than $5,000 for these appraisals on these commercial real estate properties that you offered for investments.
I'm not answering. I don't know who you are. That's, so if you have...
Now, this is David
Isn't it-
Grant. This is David Grant's cross there.
Isn't
Yeah.
it true that you have 70 related entities to the Point Center Financial, including the NFL, and an LLC for every single REO, and a number of other LLCs on top of that, all tied to you, Mr. Harkey, personally?
I'm not answering. I don't know who you are.
Can you explain to me why you have commingled your securities in the loans that you made, such as NFL, mortgage, pool, and trust deeds into the same loan? Or would you like to answer that for him, Mr. Benice?
Tell David his cross is very good.
This is not David's cross. This is my research in documentation that you people produce.
Just for the record, I'm going to get a transcript of this back and forth. Him asking questions, you refusing to answer, and it will be in our motion point of trust.
So for the record, let me state this. I have no confidence in these people's ability to manage Point Center Financial, the related LLCs, the investor assets that are associated with those related LLCs. I do believe, and I think I have personally seen the evidence of a Ponzi scheme through the documentation that they themselves have produced, and I'm very concerned about it. Okay, and I'd like to see a trustee appointed, and I'd like to see it go into receivership.
Then no one will get a dime.
Well, neither will you.
No one will get a dime.
And you're not a creditor, so you don't have a dog in the
I am a creditor now.
No, you're not.
Oh, yes, but I am.
No, you're not.
Put this on your notepad, Indio Citrus Ranch. Go investigate that.
I did.
And then you don't know much about it.
thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else who would like to ask Mr. Harkey any questions regarding the debtor's assets and liabilities? Okay, if there is no one else that would like to say anything, does anybody want to say anything else? Mr. Bernice, Mr. Marshall.
At this time.
Okay, therefore, this 341 examination is concluded. It is now 5:10 on May 2nd, 2013. Thank you, Mr. Harkey.
Thank you.